Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today with episode 240 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it is me, Karak, with ACG.
Perfect. Karak, my friend, as always, I like to check up on you. How are you doing this lovely Friday?
Excellent. I have no coronavirus at this time.
All right, perfect. That's great to know. I'm glad you're in good health. Stay blessed. Appreciate that. So let's just leap right into it, man. Have you been playing anything as of late? Any games? Anything catching your interest? We were talking last week how February is just dead as shit, but has anything at all grabbed you? Or is it just a movie, maybe?
No. Well, okay. So two things. I played about 4 hours of Wolcen this morning, which is a Diablo-style game. And it's good. It's not like knock your socks off, but it's good. It's been enjoyable to play. And then actually, yes, TV show. I've been watching The Outsider, which is a Stephen King TV show. Very slow, methodical opening, but it's basically what would happen in a normal small town if a possible like supernatural event happens. And it's not world-spanning supernatural event. It's just small enough to where you're never 100% sure what exactly is occurring. And it's really it's awesome because they're consistently trying to figure out what the real cause of these weird things going on would be versus like supernatural. There's no vampire hunter who shows up and is like, I know everything. Everybody instead is like, how is this possible? And it's fucking awesome. I think we're about one episode away from the last one that's been televised. They have a couple more, but fantastic show. Little slow, but on purpose slow. That's what I've been doing.
Interesting. On purpose slow. So describe that a little bit. You said methodical.
Have you seen Justified?
Slow? No.
Have you seen this TV shows? You don't watch movies, but you do watch some TV shows.
I do. Yeah.
So what's a TV show that you like?
I could go to one that I actually kind of got back into recently. It's not like TV. It's the Clone Wars animated series that one that apparently it's coming back, I think, this month.
So you know how Clone Wars usually has the episode issue, whatever the problem is, and then the overarching thing. So it's you're always, there's a little thing going on in the episode, but then there's some character development, and then there's also the overarching story. What goes on in this is one event is the entire season, one particular thing, and every single episode is following the people around it in a much more sedate fashion and in a slowed down fashion. So there's never that moment where you and I in a D&D game where you're like, aha, I rolled 20 intelligence. I've figured out the bad guy. These shows don't do that. It's picking
keeps it close to the chest, you mean?
Yeah, and it's picking away.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so like they'll spend 5 minutes looking at, and it's really off-camber discussion, very realistic. Like when two people are together, I just did it. You'll halfway get through a sentence and then say, like, hey man, speaking of that, did you check out the new VR game? You just bounce to a completely different subject, and that happens in the show. So it'll be like two cops watching video footage. They're just looking for one dude in 8 hours of video footage, and they'll be talking, and then somebody will be like, how's your foot? Oh, and it's like the issue with all these side meandering narratives. And it's fantastic. I like them. I love fast stuff too, but occasionally I like to pick a show and just and give it time. And this show has just enough creep factor. Every episode has some creep factor that you're like sort of laid back and you're like, yeah, it's no big deal. And then you're like, wait, what? Did I just see? Who's that in the background? And your brain is like, I don't know what's happening now. So it's been enjoyable.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to ask because, like, for me, like, as someone who breaks down games more than shows, when someone says like a show is slowly paced in a good way, I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, because I think it is different in games versus shows. I think you're right.
Oh, absolutely. Because I think gameplay, games, you have to account for gameplay rather.
Yeah,
you gotta you gotta cross all those bridges. Yeah, for me, I've really just been playing Smite. And I started a Bulletstorm because I saw that the Outriders Reveal was coming. We'll talk about that later in the show, but I knew it was going to be an RPG, and I was like, I never had a chance to get my hands on Bulletstorm. I've had it for free through PSN for a while, and man, that is such a It is the pinnacle, and actually, pinnacle is not the right word. It is the perfect example of what gaming in, I'd say, 2012, 2013 was, right? It's like a very linear,
it's a snapshot,
fast-person shooter. Yeah, it has a fast-person shooter, first-person shooter. Yeah, it's just, yeah, like little truncated sections. Like, it doesn't have the movement all together because Doom didn't exist, where it kind of revolutionized that. You can see how it was lagging behind, but had like really good ideas in some areas, like the skill point system. And as you for those who have never played it, as you take enemies out in stylish fashion, whether you set them on fire, shoot their head off, or you kick them into a cactus, or all this different stuff. It's a highly interactive game, which is where the fun comes in. But you don't have that locomotion like we've come to expect with games like Doom and first-person shooters that have followed suit. It just doesn't have that. So a part of that's because it was made so long ago that the levels couldn't be as open while maintaining all those gameplay elements. So it's been just a real, like you said, a real interesting snapshot of what gaming was back then. And playing it, I'm having fun. Like, it's not that great, but I'm having fun. It's made me really appreciate how far things have come, though, for our industry. And so I'm happy I'm playing it. Really short game. I've kind of just like piecemealed through it, and I'm still already almost done. Because like I said, I've been playing a lot of Smite, so what essentially happens is once we're done playing Smite, I hop on this game. I've hopped on it for like two 2-hour sessions, 1 hour and a half session, and I'm already in the last act. So really, really tiny game. There is multiplayer and challenge runs, but like I said, the gameplay it just feels stiff, and that's mostly due to the controls. I even tried remapping, but the other control options that are there just it's not the remapping that like we have nowadays. Once again, it makes you appreciate the options we have because they have like different settings, but they're not good. What you have to do is sprint with holding the X button, but then if you double tap the X button, you'll slide. Clicking on the left stick lets you crouch. The sensitivity for your X and Y axis are completely different, but there's only one sensitivity meter. A lot of things that just really throw off a shooter, and it doesn't feel good to control. Where the gameplay is very much like get in their face, kick them into a cactus, kick them to barbed wire, shoot their head off, but the controls don't let you. So it's really strange. It reminds me of like Red Dead,
you know what?
The game's fighting against you in a real weird way.
This entire time, it was actually reminding me of Dead Island versus Dying Light. Because Dead Island tried, it was cumbersome, and then Dying Light, I think, for the most part, did the same stuff, but was slick. You felt like you could do what it was saying at times.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. You had like this really weird weight attached to your feet in Dead Island, where Dying Light, you could just really get on a roll, and plus with the grappling hook, that game is great. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing. Nothing spectacular, nothing of interest or unique. New Dragon Ball card set came out, so I've been just dedicating a lot of time to that as well. Just because that's my addiction, that's my vice. We all have one. Anything else you're playing? Anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to pimp before we get into the news for the week?
No, I've been doing some. Like I got here. It's funny you mentioned that because there was a new Mage Knight or HeroScape set too. So I got those. They're based on Black Panther the movie. So like
cool.
So like sometimes when HeroScape or HeroClix comes out, they'll have a Black Panther character that's based on the comics. Then they'll have one based on the movie. Then they'll have one based on like a different version of the comics. So those came out, and I've been playing with those.
What are the different abilities, I guess? Because I only have the Ninja Turtle ones because I'm just like a Ninja Turtle freak. Like,
did you get the HeroScape for Ninja Turtles?
Yeah.
Oh, very
cool.
Because
I got into it through that. I played it, and I didn't know it was this huge, expansive thing, and that's what sort of pushed me away because I thought it was just like a one thing.
Right,
and then I caught into the Dragon Ball card game where that sort of took me away because I was like, I'm not going to spend money on both. It's a pretty big sink. So like, what's the difference between these characters in HeroClix?
So if you mean like multiple Black Panthers, what had happened is they would look at the movie and they would look at like a comic book. Let's say they were making 2 Black Panthers and one was going to release in May and one was going to release in December. They would actually go and look at a movie and see actions he did in the movie, like a special move he did in the movie that was very cool. And then they would also do the same thing for the comic, and then they would look at the skills that are in the skill book and assign one of the skills that fed with it. So like if Black Panther in the movie dashed really quick, they might call it, like something like that on that character. But the other Black Panther, it's a little like Batman's easier actually. So Batman, you have Christian Bale and you have Ben Batfat, the big old fucking fatty Ben is in there, but he's big, right? Those Batman, his Batman sculpt would look dramatically different than Christian Bale's, and his would have like punch into the floor because that's a movie move that he did, right? And so it would be a pound move, and you would know that skill generically, and then maybe Christian Bale's would have like a different kind of batarang because he was a big, he had a lot of different tools in those, even more so I think in those than in Ben's. And that's how they do it. And so you can have Batman against, like one time we had like 11 Batmen against 11 other Batmen, all taken from the TV shows, all the movies, all the specials, and we had a battle between Batman just to see like which team of 11 would win. And it's pretty fucking cool. They've done some incredible work to sort of make sure that whatever you get is, feels at least somewhat unique to somebody else.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what it's all about, man, with those those types
it's
of
just
games.
like cards in that way. They want to make sure
exactly.
when you get it, you feel
everything's just got to be slightly viable, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing. Yeah, I get that. So that's cool, man. Plus, you have a sick as shit game table, so that definitely helps.
Took me a long time to make that son of a bitch, but I did get it made.
Off, man.
Yeah.
I still remember the first picture you posted that. I was like, damn. Like that's so clean.
But it explains why they're so expensive. Because when I originally was going to buy one, I was seeing the prices and I was like, why the fuck are they so expensive? I'll build one. And then when I built it, I was like, oh, I see. I see. Because it's not easy at all.
You pay half the time, ladies and gentlemen, when something's high price, you're paying for convenience.
And like that incredible artsmanship. Because I'm telling you, I glued this thing together and I glued way more of my house than I did that table. There was glue everywhere. Yeah. It was ridiculous.
It reminds me of AirPods. Like you're paying for a Apple headphone without the wires, and you're like, why would I spend $200 on that? And then you put them in, and you're like, wow, I don't have anything fighting against me, trying to strangle me while I'm doing things. Yeah. And I can listen to a podcast or music while I go on a run without a worry.
It's just some improvements over what you have.
But is it a $200 improvement? I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't say so, rather. But
I wouldn't.
You're paying for convenience. Literally, that's half the time you're just paying for convenience. All right. With that, let's get into the news. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, we are a gaming podcast. Every week, we just round up the news. We talk about it, and if you want to support that vision, that show, then we are available on Patreon. You can get early access for the show for $1. $2 puts you in the tier where you can get early access to not only this show, but the other podcast I run with my girlfriend every other week called BFGF AFK. We just did an episode discussing our favorite GameCube games.
Oh,
and
cool.
Then, it was really fun. We're kind of turning it almost into like a supplemental side gaming podcast because people seem to like the back and forth between like real talk and just kind of like in-depth game stuff. Nostalgia podcast sort of. So it's been fun doing that. And then at the $3 tier is the Discord. So you get access to everything I just mentioned, plus getting involved in the show, asking questions, which we have a bunch of today that we'll get through. Karak, you also have a Patreon. Anything fun going on over there?
But we can't talk about it right now. But some pretty big stuff coming up in the next couple weeks for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a busy couple of weeks for both of us,
yes,
I think,
very busy.
With stuff happening. Yeah, and so with that, I also would like to say for the future of our show, we have some pretty neat guests lined up on a list. A lot of emails have been sent these last number of days, so you should start to see some more. I trust in our show. I believe in our show, so I think you're going to start to see some pretty awesome guests soon. And I just want to make sure everyone's prepared for that. Knows it's coming. I don't want to say who.
Be prepared.
But be prepared. It's going to be cool. All right. With that out of the way now, Karak, let's talk about game console prices. The new gen is on the horizon, and we have a guesstimate. One that, I mean, at least for me, I've been listening to a lot of like PS5 discussions, Xbox One, Series X discussions, so I wasn't too caught off guard by this latest price statement, but we're going to get into it. This comes from a article on Bloomberg. So let's give it a read here. It says, Sony is struggling with PlayStation 5 price due to costly parts. Scarce components have pushed the manufacturing costs for Sony Corp's next PlayStation to around $450 per unit. So this is just to manufacture, by the way. The $450 is making the console. It is not the actual price that you are purchasing it for. But we'll get into how that tells us sort of what the price is in just a second. Forcing a difficult price-setting decision in its battle with Microsoft, according to people with knowledge on the matter. The Japanese conglomerate is preparing to gradually replace the 6-year-old PS4 console, releasing its PlayStation 5 the same holiday season its arch rival debuts the Xbox Series X. Sony typically finalizes a console price in February of the release year, followed by mass production in the spring. With the PS5, the company is taking a wait-and-see approach, said the people asking not to be named because the details are private. The PS4 released in 2013 at a retail price of $399, but was estimated by IHS Markit to cost $381 to manufacture. With the $450 unit cost and the similar gross margin, the PlayStation 5's retail price would have to be at least $470. That'd be a hard sell to consumers considering Sony's most expensive machine now is the $400 PS4 Pro, and it is often discounted. Consumers will benchmark their expectations based off the PS4 Pro and PS4, Thong said. If Sony prices above that, it would likely be to balance a need to offset higher material costs against the risk to demand, which Sony had declined to comment on. We can dig into this article a little bit more, but it's all about tech and stuff. So let's pause there. Let's talk just general prices. Does $500 to you sound too high?
No.
Yeah, I think it was right where I expected. Does that mean it's cheap? No, but it's right where I expected for a new console that's going to be pretty powerful, it sounds.
Yeah, I think people should actually, remember also that that's just for the system, one controller. Most people are going to get one game, one controller with it, maybe, so they get the two controllers. So you're actually talking more along the lines of almost $600 or $500 or $600. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not actually even 100% sure 500 is going to be the thing because dude, inflation's changed. People's plans for purchasing is different. Cell phones are $1,000 now. Multiple cell phones are coming out at the 700 plus range. Those, of course, to a lot of people are required for their daily lives because they're a bunch of pussies. But I don't know. I personally think 500 would be the best bet. But I wouldn't wake up tomorrow and be completely stunned if it was 550 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm getting a feeling that either it could be a lot more than we had initially expected. $500 does sound right from both standpoints. I think my prediction has been that you're going to see probably Microsoft eat the cost a little bit more to undercut Sony even more, sort of do what happened to them last generation with the original Xbox One, but also because Microsoft pushes so many services and they are more, I'm trying to get on every platform, right? We saw them head to PC first. We see them moving on to Switch a little bit. There is the rumor of the xCloud working on the Switch to give Game Pass an option on the Switch. So provided that part of the rumor also ends up being true, I think Microsoft sees a more profitable future in just getting the consoles in their hands and then relying on their very valuable services. So I think you're probably going to see Microsoft undercut Sony, where Sony's trying to take this wait-and-see approach. I think Microsoft's going to just take charge. They're going to say, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised, ladies and gentlemen, $450. I would not be surprised at all if Microsoft just went $450, because Sony's going to look at that and be, based off what we hear, it costs that much for them to make the system. And Sony doesn't, they got good offerings, but I don't think they have the offerings on the level of a Microsoft. They have great exclusives, but they don't have the services that I think could be more consumer friendly to them, which means I think Sony's inevitably going to be above them. I just think that's sort of how it's going to pan out personally for me. But also with how powerful these consoles are, given that there may be a shortage of production of them thanks to the coronavirus, which we talked about a little bit last week. There is also the possibility of attacks on all of these coming over from China to the U.S. So a lot of that accounted for. The price can just inflate, as Karak said. So these could just shoot up. That's what's interesting about this console generation. I've been just getting this sense that it's a lot more Wild West than I think people are letting on. And we always talk about each day new people are getting into games. So some people may not have even seen just the PS4 and the Xbox One and how that generation started off, where I don't recall entirely, but I don't think there were as many leaks like this. I don't think it was as unsure. It just sort of happened. And obviously the internet's changed a lot in those past 7 years, where information does get out a lot quicker and does spread like wildfire. But yeah, man, I think it could easily go either way, is sort of my standpoint. But 500 sounds right.
Yeah, and I mean the coronavirus thing doesn't only affect it may not affect their particular manufacturing, but it could affect like they were saying with RAM prices, and we already knew RAM prices were going to go up, which was completely unrelated. So you have all these things that are multiplying, and so like what normally would be $5 change is now like, oh, well, that changes this by $5, which actually changes this over here by $5, which actually, and you have this weird like domino effect that I just don't think people are preparing for. So for me, I would just say Microsoft might also end up. So Microsoft has their service announcement coming up, which will indicate how much you can get the Xbox X Series, how much it'll be, as well as how much it'll be for the service and the system if you want to do the payment plan. So that's probably going to be, I would assume, I don't know, anywhere from like $20 to $30. But then they've also got the Lockhart, which is their weaker system, but it's still twice as powerful as the X. So there's a weird thing that may happen too. If they price the Lockhart at a really good price, and then they price the Xbox X at a price that is probably what we might expect for a very powerful system, let's say $600 just for a second. You actually have what's very well known in salesmanship, which is you can't undercut it too much or you look like you're not as worth the money. So what would happen at that point is Sony would have to decide which one is the competitor, because they're in the middle now. So do you go to 600 because you want people to think your system is as powerful? Because money does matter. People don't believe that, but it absolutely does. I mean, every single bit of data we have about sales does indicate that while somebody sells something at $99 and maybe sells a ton, they were originally sold at 300, which is why 99 sells, because it's a deal. If it starts at 99, people will go, there's something wrong with it. So that'll be really interesting, because there's like 3 price points. If Sony is going to have to wait for 3 announcements, they're going to have to wait for, if there's the Lockhart, they're going to have to wait for the service price to figure out where that is. And then they're going to have to identify the Xbox X Series price. And then they have to figure out where they fit in the power scheme. It's all fucked up.
Yeah, I just feel like sitting on this side of the fence of waiting to see what Microsoft does and then reacting. I don't believe in reactionary marketing in any way, shape, or form, because I think it just sounds like to me they're stuck in the past. Maybe it wasn't reactionary. The price may have been set already, but it looked like a kick to the balls to Microsoft last generation when Sony came out and said used games work, and they did this whole video showing how you could put your used game in your console, and then they undercut the console prices. Like I said, everything was just a huge dunk on what Xbox was doing, and I really think while Sony kept it going, right? They had great exclusives. That initial dunk on Microsoft helped them roar out the gate. Let's be honest, and I think they're looking to replicate that, but I think they're not respecting maybe that Microsoft is a much wiser opponent this time around.
Yeah.
And also that Microsoft now has their eyes. Their eyes aren't even set on Sony. I don't even think that's the thing, right? Like I think Sony's taking a very narrow focused approach. They're looking at Microsoft and saying, like, let's see what they do. Microsoft already came out and said last week that they don't even view Nintendo or Sony as their direct competitors. They worry about Google. They worry about Amazon, who are trying to get gaming to what I think Phil Spencer said was like 70 million people. So I think that's also why you're starting to see like Xbox creep onto the Switch, because they're like, look, these people can just completely wash us over with how much reach they have. Now, if I'm Phil Spencer, I'm sure he's not talking about Stadia. I'm sure he's talking about just the general reach of Google, and if they kind of hit the ground running and get cloud gaming right, which they have access to a ton of resources, they could eventually do that. So I think just it seems like Sony's not taking the most wise approach if that's why they're reacting, right?
Yeah, and some of that.
You're just
Oh, sorry.
left in limbo. No, I'm just saying, especially when you're left in limbo with prices, I think you have to be more decisive because soon, you can't reveal it too late because people got to save up for it. That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Sorry, now go on. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that also it's I with if you read that entire interview Phil Spencer was doing, he was answering a wide-ranging series of questions, and it wasn't just about games platforms, it was about streaming. So I took what he said to mean he's not an idiot and he understands that Sony's a competitor, but they're only in the competitor in one particular place, of which there's four. And one place that their competitor is for a platform that does not upgrade and sits at your home. That's one part of what Microsoft is going for. They are also going for streaming. Now you are not looking at Sony at all because they're not even engaged in it. And you are now looking at these others. Then, he says we're not competing with Nintendo. In a way, I think we've all known that because they don't have portable hardware and they don't have the games like Nintendo has. So, right. So to me, just from him being where he was, I think it was a little bit of some PC political talk, but I also do believe that their thought process is that they have four competitors and none of those competitors overlap completely with any others. And they really don't. For example, Google Stadia, if it had worked, still wouldn't be a competitor for home hardware because there is no home hardware. It would have been a competitor just for streaming. So I think that there's some oddities even in how they all want to go about it. And you are absolutely right. They would take a loss. Microsoft is known to take a loss. Matter of fact, they're one of only two companies that has on hardware multiple times taken a loss to get them into people's houses. I think with a situation like this and with them seeing services the way they are and people like jumping into those, I can see them just packaging everything and trying to get people, engaged in that and just saying, we'll lose on the hardware. Because remember, if you're super popular and you're losing on the hardware, you're making no money. You're losing money. So there's actually a very fine point in there where companies, if they know they're going to be super popular, don't want to lose money because they're not going to recoup it. Microsoft has a way to recoup it. So they are going a weird way that I don't think we've seen a lot of other companies go. They know that they can lose it, where I think Sony just doesn't have the infrastructure. They don't, dude.
I don't think Gaikai panned out for them as well as they should have.
No, and they got Microsoft and Sony split on live as well. Some people for on live. Matter of fact, one of my favorite YouTubers was an on live employee, and when they crumbled, he went to Microsoft, and his friend, who was also streaming with him, went to Sony because they sort of hired the people that crumbled at on live as well. And they're not there. They're not there. And then Microsoft yesterday announced that huge announcement with Samsung too, saying that they're going to have streaming on all Samsung phones. So it's like Microsoft is doing something that's just it's hitting where they always have hit, but it's all this other stuff. And if it works and they don't have some huge issue like the coronavirus, because another thing, people were confused. Unless it's a proprietary issue in the PS5, Xbox will be hit by those price increases as well. Just so you know. Yeah. Yes. I know you knew that. I didn't mean to say just so you know, but just so you know if you're watching.
No, I know what you meant.
Those DRAM is DRAM. It's going to be in both systems. So if one company's being hit, it'll hit both unless Microsoft moves their stuff to Thailand, which the rumor was they were, but we'll see.
I didn't even think of that. Let's keep reading this article and we'll dig in a little bit more. The company's biggest headache, this is referring to Sony, is ensuring a reliable supply of, as Karak said, DRAM and NAND? N-A-N-D?
Yeah.
NAND? Okay. You just tell me. You do all the tech stuff. NAND flash memory. With both in high demand as smartphone makers gear up for fifth generation devices, according to people familiar with Sony operations. Samsung just announced its Galaxy S20 product range, each variant of which will have 5G and a minimum of 12 gigabytes of RAM in the US. Most of the components for the console have been locked down, the people say, including the cooling system, which is unusually expensive at a few dollars per unit. Typically, companies would spend less than $1, but Sony opted to lavish more on making sure heat dissipation from the powerful chips housed inside the console isn't an issue. I think, after the Red Ring of Death, you can never be too safe on that front.
Right.
The ongoing coronavirus outbreak has had no impact so far on preparations for PlayStation 5 production. They said the company has yet to decide how many PlayStation 5 units it will make in the first year they added. So that's as it stands now. We're talking in the future, depending on obviously a status of a cure, of treatment, of how widespread it gets. Stuff worth considering. Continuing on, separately, Sony plans to release a new version of the PlayStation VR virtual. Why did they write VR virtual
I don't know.
reality?
Yeah.
Interesting. Sony plans to release a new version of the PlayStation VR headset, tentatively scheduled after the PS5 goes on sale. So interesting, they are going to give VR a second go because they are technically the most popular VR platform in a lot of ways because it's the cheapest way to get in. But I don't think they just closed down a VR studio, which is, and Karak, you made a video about that.
Yeah, they closed down their main VR hub studio, strangely.
Yeah. So interesting that they may be doubling down on that. I don't know why they don't double down on the Vita, just saying. But anyway, wrapping up this article, Sony has already canceled some previously planned features for a new mirrorless camera due to this year, owing to the constrained DRAM supply. Several people with knowledge on the matter said. Sony executives are voicing patience about the next console's pricing as they anticipate the transition to be a gradual one, said people familiar with its day-to-day operations. Many of the games launched for the PlayStation 5 will also be available to play on the predecessor's machines, which we already know. Kind of take a look at Outriders, which we'll be talking about later. So revenue from software and related network services is expected to keep the business performance intact. Sony and Microsoft are both expanding their respective online subscription services, revenue from which may allow them greater flexibility on hardware pricing, as Karak and I sort of tackled. Almost done here. People within the PlayStation business unit said a key factor in deciding the ultimate PlayStation 5 retail price will be where Microsoft sets its price for the next generation Xbox Series X. Microsoft is widely expected to hold that information back until the E3 Gaming Expo in Los Angeles in June. There is pressure from CFO Totoki for Sony to provide more transparency and information in the build-up to the PS5's release, which has caused some consternation internally. Asked about when he expects Sony to provide guidance on the gaming business outlook for the fiscal year, Totoki said that the plan is no different from the recent past, meaning the guidance can be expected around the end of April. If the company takes longer than usual, analysts may look to its next investor relations meeting to glean hints about the new console's retail pricing. That company meeting is going to be held in the company held that meeting in late May last year. Sorry about that. Okay, so really meaty article there. Lots of great information there. Great write-up by Bloomberg. With that additional info in mind, any new thoughts sparking about the future pricing of these consoles whatsoever?
Yeah, I think Bloomberg's lying.
Oh.
Jim Ryan, and I just quoted his article less than a week ago, stated very clearly, Sony as a whole expects the PS4 to PS5 switchover to be the most aggressive and quickest switchover ever. That Bloomberg article states they feel that it will be slow and the uptake will be by, like organic or whatever. That is absolutely not what Jim said.
See, I thought that while I was reading, and I feel like what I just did there was I passed you the ball for an alley-oop, and I was like,
I just don't get it. I don't, and that's what they might mean by consternation. They might mean that those two are butting heads because Jim is very direct, and very. He wants a certain thing. It sounds like Sony Japan may want a certain thing, so they're going to have to come to grips with it. But that is absolutely exactly. There's no way of interpreting it. It's exactly the opposite of what Jim has said.
Yeah,
and Jim said it twice.
We've brought that up a number of times on the show.
So
too.
I have no clue. Yeah, because I think we brought it up last week. So I have, maybe that's what they mean by like the consternation is maybe one just wants to put it down and say let's do this, and maybe Jim is more let's hold back and play this without giving date out. I also do think you're right about saving. I think you're right about saving. However, I do feel that withholding the price point, even after E3, by the way, would not directly affect those initial purchasers that much, unless there was a massive delta. Like people were expecting 500 and it was 800. If I were Microsoft, I'd be like, here's some fucking wicked games that play on all of our systems, and we're going to have a service. Stay tuned, and just let Sony have to sit there and go, okay, if we don't announce it here, Microsoft still has an event prior to the release. We don't. So what do we do?
Isn't that in September though?
Well, wait, is what in? I think E3 is in August.
The Xbox. Yeah, I'm talking about the Xbox.
Yeah, they have an event after E3. So I'm saying they're the only ones who could say we're waiting. I mean, it
really, also depends on their main selling point for the console. When we're looking at Microsoft, we know they have that kind of subscription service to get you to buy an Xbox. You can pay like $20 a month. If they're gonna make that like their main pushing thing, like pay $20 a month for the next 24 months and get an Xbox Series X day one. If that's their main pushing point, announce it as late as you fucking want, right? Because I think people would absolutely eat that up.
Exactly. I mean, we just don't know. Also, Microsoft, though, if I were Microsoft and I knew E3 was mine, right? Because it is. Because Sony's not going to be there. If I was MS, I know people say it's dying, whatever, and we're going to get to that in a bit. I'm not on that group. But if I were Microsoft, I'd be like, well, if it's going to die, let's burn this motherfucker out. I would make this E3 the biggest, most massive fucking E3 I possibly could.
Yeah, wring it dry.
I would wring it dry. I would be like, this is not E3 anymore. It's MS E3. It's like, this is ours. And we're just going to, if these guys aren't going to be here, let's fucking make sure that huge third parties have a giant amount of time on our stage. Let's make sure blah, blah, blah. Let's make sure that people can't leave E3 without knowing everything. So it'll be interesting. It's probably going to be one of the better launches ever when it comes to strategy, like watching how they did things, and also their own impact, the coronavirus and just the prices. It's got to be tough to be a leader and go like, I want to say the price, but I don't know if it'll be the same thing tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It can change because for those who don't know, it's just like the virus can impact workers who are helping manufacture the console.
Look at Foxconn, major workers. They were quarantined for 14 days. Also, lastly, the cooling system in PS4 is just like the Xbox in the fact that it's more expensive than last time. So both of those guys are trying to go for CPUs that are overclocked, obviously, and I'm assuming they'll probably be somewhat alike, but it makes sense that it's more. If you look at the Xboxes, it's a fucking massive fan. It's like a wind tunnel effect. I would assume PS5s is going to look maybe not the same form factor, but it's going to be beefy.
The reports to be trusted, then the cooling system, they said they invested in that.
Yeah, a couple more bucks. Yeah,
which I think is smart because if you're messing with stronger hardware, it's just like building a PC. You always want to have a good cooling system in there. You don't.
Yeah, and if you have a PS4 Pro, you know what it's like to have that thing turn fucking freakishly on in the middle of like some game you're playing. And just have
it's just like you got a jet engine. I don't think there's a louder console sometimes than the original Xbox 360 spinning a disc. Like it's just if you don't install
and the old
that
disc
game,
drive, yeah,
holy smokes, man, that shit was so loud. Until Noah, former host of the show, told me that you can press Y on the dashboard and you can install the game onto your hard drive. Then the disc doesn't spin as much or as loudly, at least. But my God, when I did that before, it was like, it sounded like someone was taking off. It was ridiculous. All right, any closing thoughts on the console pricing, or shall we move into E3?
No, it's gonna be very fun to watch.
Yes. Let's get our popcorn and kick back. All right, so pretty significant change for E3 this year for those who watch every year, which I imagine most of us at least keep a tab on it. Geoff Keighley has announced on his Twitter account that he's not going to be attending. And I think the most useful article for this has come from GamesIndustry.biz, who interviewed Geoff Keighley and released that alongside his announcement. So let's get a couple of quotes from Geoff. Kind of general synopsis for those who don't know is that E3 has been going downhill. E3 is dying. So we'll talk about that as well. But let's read what Geoff had to say first and why his absence is admittedly significant. Given what's been publicly communicated about the plans for E3 2020, I just don't feel comfortable participating in this show at this time, Keighley said. I saw the E3 website leak this morning and said, you know what? I really need to let people know what to expect from me so no one's disappointed. This certainly wasn't an easy decision to make, but I think it's the right one for me. I wanted fans to know before tickets go on sale. Keighley went on to say, We're at an interesting inflection point between physical and digital events, and certainly E3 is in the middle of a transition, evolving from what was traditionally an industry trade show, he said. As someone who has attended E3 for more than 2.5 decades, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, he has not missed an E3 for 25 years, so this is his first one he's hopping out on, there are, of course, a lot of emotions. But when you look at it objectively, E3 is really just an idea about uniting the industry and fans to celebrate the medium on a global scale. The future of E3 will be determined based on how effective the brand is at delivering that goal. He continues, I absolutely think there's a way forward for the brand of E3. This is just my take, but I think E3 needs to be more digital, global, and inclusive in its approach to connecting gamers and celebrating the industry. It's not really about who buys a booth on the show floor. Anyone who participated in the Game Festival on Steam around the Game Awards probably has a pretty good sense of my vision for how we bring the world together around games. Keighley added in that he will be supporting the industry in other ways this year. I'm always open to conversations with game publishers and partners about ways to evolve how we come together for industry events, no matter what. It's really important that we get everyone to participate in these events. That's something I'll look forward to doing at places like Gamescom and the Game Awards. And this follows PlayStation deciding they're not going to show up. I noticed he brought up a bit about the Game Awards. I noticed like one bit of, I don't want to say hypocrisy, but as he starts talking about where the industry is heading and how E3 is celebrating games and stuff, I don't really see in a number of ways what's so different about the Game Awards and what he does. I really, really don't. He even said on his show just a couple of months ago now, he just said how it's all, or I'm sorry, I think it was on his Twitter. He just said it was about announcements. He knows that that's like the main draw for them, announcements. Same thing with E3, right? Like E3 is available digitally. There's a lot of streams. I guess the global part does make sense. Can you have E3 in other places at the same time to get more people involved in playing games? Sure. Could there be more E3-based sales? Of course. Those types of things. But I don't understand, in a sense, his perspective being so different from what he is a visionary for with the Game Award.
I think he's full of shit. And I think the hypocrisy is incredibly high. First of all, not only does he say that, but second of all, he's got a competitor, like a competitor show. He does. And this is why I think the first year he did it, I was like, he's definitely not going to continue to do E3 at some point. It's gonna drag off. Additionally, just like all press, they're very pissy old men who are mad that YouTubers and gamers can go. So now he's trying to change the target for E3, pretend it's a different target than his own, and be like, oh, look at us, we're doing this, but these guys need to change. No, they don't. They don't need to change at all. They have fans going to a show that for the longest period of time was a bunch of old men who love to have their little secret fucking cult meetings and be like, look at what I got to see that no one else got to see. YouTubers came and stole their lunch. And they're not succeeding to get it back. So they're making their own YouTube channels half the time. And the reason why is because a lot of those people, a middling YouTuber has a much larger influence than a massive website now. It is just a fact. Go look. It is a absolute fact. And what is happening is, just like him, he's trying to fight for exclusive trailers on his video game awards. He's trying to fight for exclusive announcements. It is very difficult to fight when at the same time you have an event in the close proximity that does a lot of the same things. Because he was trying to sell it on that YouTube thing he does, the Coliseum. Additionally, not to be rude to him, I released that video after hearing a bunch of people on a forum tell me they didn't even know he was at E3. And then I do the video and multiple people are like, Geoff who? What's Geoff got to do with E3? The problem is E3 is already global. E3 is already looked at by multiple people. E3 is already co-streamed. E3 did not require in any way, shape, or form Coliseum, and I've watched Coliseum. It is bad. I don't know any other way to say it. Go watch the last couple Coliseums. It is a repeat of what's on the fucking game show floor half the time, and it's a bunch of people going like, so you've got this new game. Yes, we already fucking said we got a new game. It was like a repeat. There were multiple times where it'd be like, so you got a new game coming out
a rerun
in March. And they're like, and you're all, yes, we know, because they already showed the fucking trailer that's coming out in March. And all this stuff was repeated. And what really needs to change, honestly, my personal opinion is what really needs to change is a lot of the people's belief that there is anything special about like journalists or YouTubers, because we're not. You and I talk about this. We're gamers. We open up a YouTube channel, right? And it works. And what happens is these guys don't understand how to make a change, so they start making this sort of exclusive thing. It's like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. There's absolutely nothing E3 needs to do different. E3 is fine. If E3 goes away, that would be a shame. I would see it transforming because things are changing. But people are pretending E3 is the only thing changing. That would be ignoring the Game Awards are new. That is a change. It is creation. Creation is change. So that's change in and of itself. And then you also have PAX. How many PAX? You've gone to a PAX. I've gone to a PAX. They're fucking massive. There's a different feel to them. This kind of bullshit, dude, it sounds like what an old dude on a hill talks like. That's exactly what he sounds like. He sounds like an old elitist dude on the top of a hill, trying to hide it, trying to be like, I'm fighting for the common man, so I'm going to go down there and I'm going to fucking sell lemonade on the street corner. And it's like, yeah, but you drove down there in your limo. So what the fuck? I mean, there's nothing special about what he said. I just think he's a liar. I hate it. I think he's a liar, and I think it reminds me of NFL players, where like when one NFL player does something, people will jump on him and then slightly change the rules on him and like give them other rules they need to attain. And suddenly this person's like, well, not only can I, like, it's almost like when somebody's watched too closely, we know they'll say something bad because people say bad shit in life. It's like if you're watched too closely, and it just puts all this focus on something when in real life, a lot of times, they doth protest too much. And that's what he's doing, is he's protesting too much. And to me, I don't buy it. That's me. You can tell I'm fiery about it. I fucking hate it. It makes us look dumb.
There are certain things, like you think of the leak last year that like doxed tons of journalists and YouTubers.
For sure.
Like that's awful. That definitely hurts E3. That hurts the industry. It's not a good look whatsoever. So I think that definitely damaged the show. I agree with your stance on the like there are tons of fans going. It is bigger. I mean, in a sense, 2018 was their biggest year in show history, I believe. Like it was
2019 was down by 3,000, but 2018 was their biggest.
Yeah, and so you have that going for you. So I don't know, 3,000, is that like a substantial dip?
No,
I do see the writing on the wall in a sense of E3 needing to change. But I think,
but not in the way he said, Matty.
Yeah, no,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
I think people are failing to see what companies are starting to do is these convention spaces are useful, but what's happening is I think with E3 is leveling with others. Look at PAX East, right? You have PAX East this coming couple of weeks. You've got Bethesda going. They're bringing 76. They're bringing Doom. You've got Sony going. They're bringing The Last of Us Part 2. You got Square Enix going. They're bringing Final Fantasy. I'll tell you what, people. When I went in 2014, I was shocked to see Lawbreakers had the biggest fucking booth of the entire show floor. We know how that panned out. PlayStation had a small booth. PAX is not like a major show off your game place, but because now companies are adjusting to these conventions are popular. E3's got a big name, but so does PAX now. So what's happening is you're just seeing companies go for what suits their needs. And for Sony, it doesn't suit their needs to go to E3. And we are seeing a creation in the digital realm. Directs are insanely popular. PlayStation has State of Play, which is something that they're experimenting with. Maybe it will become popular, but I guess that you could already argue it is popular, but not in a positive way. People are hoping for that big banger direct-like show.
Yeah.
But I think their direct has some inherent bias because people just are used to what that is, and there is an expectation there. So there is digital creations there, and what you're seeing is just companies suit their needs, and Geoff Keighley is suiting his needs.
Yeah.
Look, I respect his thoughts. I think what he's,
but it's fake altruism, and I fucking
exactly. It's
I
a
fucking
little bit of
despise
fake.
That shit.
It's a little bit of fake, and I respect the guy, but
so
it's a little fake. Not to say you didn't, but it's just a little fake. I'm not gonna sit here, pull the fucking wool over my eyes and be like, oh yeah, here's what he said because it's in black and white on paper. It's like, let's use a little intuition. Let's read into it just a little bit, not to the point of speculation. I mean, He just talked about how the Game Awards 2019 was their biggest show yet. It was the most lucrative show yet. Like, why the fuck would he host E3? The man clearly makes enough money, and he's doing his own show now at fucking Gamescom. His production team is the one who did opening night live for Gamescom. For God's sakes, like,
yeah, true.
I think the writing's on the wall
That's
in that form too. He's got two vested interests in his company at two completely different shows. And I would be shocked if he didn't talk to the people at the ESA and say, hey, what if my production team came in and we hosted something not called E3 Coliseum, but this, and it's my show. And I'm not saying like Geoff Keighley, like he's an egomaniac in that regard, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was something that was pitched and didn't work out. He saw the leak in the morning and said, you know what, this is a perfect time to just hit the button and pull out. And that was it.
I agree. I think a lot of people also forget that E3 used to be big because Gamescom wasn't huge. Gamescom, European, people don't have to fly to
was
America.
Big on attendance, but not the amount of
but here's the thing. It sounds weird. We're in a world where people can jump on a jet plane, but now it's so expensive that every developer I talk to is like, I'm going to drive to PAX. It's 2 hours, let's say, to PAX West. I'm going to drive to PAX. I'm not flying to E3 with my booth and paying for a booth there. I'll hit PAX Prime and maybe one other PAX with my game, and I'll hit the gamers and possibly some influencers where you don't have to hear about the long lines. Because even at PAX, there were long lines, but nowhere near E3. I mean, not even close. And there were gamers there. PAX is a gamer-centric thing. And I think Gamescom is getting that way and getting more stuff. So yeah, things are changing. I think they're all just going to, like you said, level out. E3 will probably be that way for years just because of tradition. But it's also not stopping something else from starting. Remember how PAX started? Like, people don't even remember how PAX started. So Penny Arcade. Like, I mean, of all the weird ways to start a convention.
I know, right? Yeah, man. It's like we said. I feel like it's just leveling out. I do think, while I think it's E3 is good to have more consumers coming in because it benefits probably these companies a little bit more, and you get more feedback. I also think of it how they may have hurt themselves by opening it up to fans, because E3 was, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, E3 for me, like growing up, was the goal, right? Like, I watched it on TV on Spike for a while. I watched it every single year, and I was always like, man, like, I just want to be on that show floor, because around that time, it was when it was just the press, just YouTubers, just game creators, and it was sort of like this open playground. It was the goal, and to see it sort of downward spiral in a sense, even if it's not as, I don't think it's as aggressive as a lot of people have painted it. It's still kind of sad to see, but I think that's what made E3 stand out. And once you leveled E3 almost intentionally leveled itself with PAX and so on to get more people in by opening it to the public. Originally, it was this exclusive secret thing, like you were saying, which was a little fucking annoying because, for those who don't know, the games industry is disgustingly cliquey. So having these cliques just like littered about E3, it could be tough to socialize, get in, and all that shit. And so, quite frankly, I'm glad it opened up, but I think E3 did do some self-sustained damage at that point because they did open up. It's good, and I don't want to say bad, but it's good for people and us, but it's not smart for E3 as a business, I think.
I just don't know if we would be mentioning this at all if there wasn't the leak. I really don't. I think the leak allows for people to see a chink in the armor and start poking it. I don't personally believe... I actually do agree with you and hadn't thought about them leveling themselves with others, because they were special. It's a little bit like, you do have a country club, and it's
kind of like what you said about the Xbox and PS4 pricing. Just like that exclusivity helped them. I think
helped them, but I also do believe it didn't, and here's why. And this is something I firmly believe because I've talked to developers who back it up all the time. Is that the opening of the doors creates its own issues, but it has alleviated a shit ton of issues, including the pure monopoly on news the game websites have had. Pure monopoly. Yeah. And a lot of developers hated. So people think it's always like YouTubers versus journalists. In fact, other than a journalist getting mad at a YouTuber for fucking reading the news or something, it's really not that much. But what you do see, especially when you talk to PR people, and if you don't believe me, go look in Google. You see a lot of developers, especially leads and journalists, on Twitter. You see a lot of this like sniping that goes on. One of the major reasons is because a lot of these people were holding the mallet over these companies and are like, well, if you don't tell us, we won't cover your game, or blah, blah, blah. And we've seen it. IGN has stated it. Oh, well, we thought because we previewed this game, we'd get a review copy. Bull fucking shit. You're not owed a review copy. Work prior to the very delivery of the game means absolutely nothing. You and I have dealt with that. We're adults. I don't know how they're not adults.
I understand I don't want to say expectation, but like the thought that you would maybe be on a list of consideration. It's like, why would you be?
No, you're absolutely
preview,
correct.
But,
because a list of consideration means you are being considered. It is not called a list of guarantee.
Yep.
So like, you get it. I'm on a list of consideration. Maybe they were. But guess what? They weren't on the list of fucking guarantee. And what we see is a lot of these developers who are getting ramrodded and have got ramrodded. And we know IGN and the IGN first thing, that's sort of become a thing where it's like, we'll cover your game. That's a smart way to do it because they're huge. You know, Co-Carnage does it. It's like, I'll cover your game. That means a lot, right? That means a ton. But those, I think, are more organic than what we used to have. What we used to have was no identification that there was something special going on. You wouldn't get an IGN first. You would just get, and I remember reading these when I was at work, where I'd read like Escapist going, you know, we're not covering this because of this. And you could always tell there was this subtle, like, there was, you know, somebody didn't scratch somebody else's back kind of stuff. And I like it more free for all, because then the developer gets to say, you know what? We want to talk to the 25 fucking viewer streamer for Horizon Zero Dawn, which happened when Horizon Zero Dawn came out. Somebody with like 250, I said 25, 250 subscribers got a code. That should fucking happen. And to me, that's exciting, because that means it makes everybody go, fuck. We got to make sure we're good. We got to make sure that nobody's resting on their laurels. We got to make sure that we're fucking bringing the game up. Sorry, I'm on a tangent here. I hate this entire discussion. It's burned me out. That's why I did a video, because I wanted to, not to you, but I wanted to be done with it on my channel and just be like, here's my fucking final stance. I'm walking away from this thing, because it's just like,
stresses me out. I'll just wrap it up there.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
As I'm like,
wrap it up there. We'll lower the blood pressure a little bit.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, so Geoff Keighley not going to E3. Yeah. Those
Jeff's
are our thoughts.
That's it. Jeff's not going. Okay, what next?
I will say one thing, actually. I'm pulling to you now. We've swapped positions.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I got to interject real quick. I think that what's great, too, about E3 now and PAX now is, and more so I'd say with PAX, is that any company stands a chance at coverage because it is way more wide open.
You bet.
Right, like... and I mean, the mailing list is insane, so it does get a little cloggy.
It does.
But yeah, really ridiculous. But you know, with that being said, it gives every game a chance, right? Like that's kind of the goal, right? I get to see the game, I get to look at it, I get to pass it, and with, you know, so many YouTubers, like some are, you know, understand to grow, we need to find our niche, and maybe this indie game is that, or maybe a game just clicks with them, because usually what grabs people. More than anything, at least what I've heard on my channel, is like, thank you. Yep, passion,
Sorry.
right? It's it's good. Yeah, you finished my sentence. It's passion. And so if someone like really is like fired up about a game, it's always consistently contagious and attention grabbing, and you want to stick around for the ride. And so I think it's good that it's more open, because it affects all of us. It affects you. It affects me. It affects IGN. It affects GameSpot. It affects anyone who works in games when anyone has a chance to cover it, and also anything has a chance to go viral. That's the other thing. I've had previews, you've had reviews that have just outperformed any major
expectations.
website.
Yeah. Or your own expectations, where you're looking at the numbers going, What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you look at it with an eyebrow raised, like, okay, I'm gonna walk away, make sure this is real.
Yeah, right, exactly. Make sure
Yeah.
some fucker dickhead isn't botting me.
Yeah, right. And so and this is not a Karak and I stroking our egos or whatever. We're just saying like
No,
that's
it's
how open it is. You know,
Yeah.
we're I'm a 374,000 subscriber channel. Not that that's small, but it's definitely not the level of reach that IGN has. But the fact that
Yeah.
I can have something that outperforms them or Karak can on the review side or discussion side is great. I think it's
Yep.
good competition. Okay, now we'll wrap that one up and talk about the Outriders reveal. So you had a chance to sit down and catch this one. It's being published by Square Enix, developed by People Can Fly. Like I said at the beginning of the show, for the What We're Playing section, Outriders is the same people who made Bulletstorm, and I've been playing that lately. Did you like what you saw with Outriders? The second I saw the full production type of stream, like, you know, a guy on the couch, another guy on a separate couch across from each other, and they're like, so tell us about the game, man. That loses me like that, like a heartbeat, just instant lost interest. I was just like, I'll tab out and I'll come back when the game's up. So I didn't listen to some of the conversation, so just so people know that. But did you like what you saw? Did it look fun?
Yeah, it did. It did look a little, I don't even want to say generic, because I think now we're getting to the point where generic doesn't mean anything because there's so many games. Like, how do you say, like,
if anything, it might be the art style and the color palette that tells people it's generic, but it didn't look
a little
generic
non-grabby. But what I saw looked fine, and their little notes that I read about what they're offering, because I got a PR announcement I think yesterday where they said they were going to release the stuff, and it looked, it looks interesting. I will say one thing: the old lead for developer or for People Can Fly and the current both posted on Twitter to clarify something. The team has had 100% turnover. So anybody related to those older games are not there.
Interesting. And you know what's funny is you could tell that looking at the game. Like, I looked at it and I was like, this doesn't look like anything from Bulletstorm.
Yeah,
so
they just wanted to make it clear, not like, oh, it won't be anything, but they were like, because people work together and that rubs off. But they were like, it will be its own thing. So be prepared for that, which I thought was pretty open of both of them, because the former lead said that, and then the lead developer is like, thank you. Yeah, we want to make sure people, don't think it's going to be like number 2 to Bulletstorm or something like that.
Right. So for those who don't know, Outriders is like an RPG shooter, third-person shooter, mind you, and it's got a lot of loot, it looks like, which really menus are similar to, I'd say, Destiny, which is to be expected. It's got that one circular cursor that just hovers around, and when you sit on a weapon for a little bit longer, you got another box that pops up, giving you the quick look at the stats. Really uninspired HUD. Not bad, but just uninspired fucking HUD. But like I said, third-person cover shooter with RPG elements. Has a little power bar on the bottom, similar to what you'd see in Mass Effect. A lot of YouTubers got to fly out to, I believe it was LA, to test the game. They did not test it on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One Series X. I keep saying Xbox One Series X. Xbox Series X. But it is coming out on those consoles. It's coming out in the holidays. A very interesting game for Square Enix to publish. They just do these weird random team-ups sometimes, and it doesn't really look like a Square game, which I think is a good thing for sure. But was there anything immediately like eye-catching about this title to you, or did it look like something you kind of threw on a list? For me, it was like a wait and see, because it looked a little rough. It reminded me, honestly, of anything of The Division, a Supernatural The Division. But what about you?
I mean, yeah. So the first thing, I don't like those HUDs because I feel like they're unresponsive with the circle thing. I hate the HUD that pretends it's a mouse for no reason.
There's always like a lag to it when you use an analog stick.
And you're like, this is not a mouse, bitch. This is a fucking thumbstick. Like, why would you ever mimic? You would never have a mouse mimic a thumbstick. Like, that would be fucking ridiculous. People would call you stupid. But for some reason, that's become a thing on the consoles. But overall, no, it looked interesting. The problem I have is that every time we get these third-person shooters, they never, ever end up good. Or I shouldn't say never, I should say insanely rarely. Everything from Strange Brigade to well, Zombie War, any of the ones where you're like looking at the character and you're shooting around.
Halakines, whatever. Wasn't that the game that you hated?
Oh, Halakine's Gun. Well, that wasn't really like this, but no, that one was bad. Oh, Gene Rain. No, you're right, Gene Rain.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, Gene Rain. Jesus. Which is getting a sequel. I just don't understand, like, what. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Like it. I liked what I read, if that makes sense. Their ideas gelled with me more than what I saw. And I'm okay with that because, you know, they are just showing gameplay and I don't believe gameplay as much as like when I see an idea, I'm like, okay, I got their idea. I get that. So what I read mixed with the stuff made me interested, not salivating, but interested.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that's the perfect way to put it. I was not hungry for more. I was fairly disinterested just because, like I said, the presentation, I was more taking like a wait and see approach. Then I saw YouTubers just posting their impressions and I sort of just muted the impressions and just watched the gameplay and was like, okay, now I got like a feel for what exactly this gameplay is. And so, yeah, there wasn't a ton to go off of. In fact, the reveal that they amped up so much.
Yeah, right.
Kind of got trumped by the general coverage that they planned from YouTubers. I don't know why companies do this. They like to own the day rather than just own multiple days in a unique sense. Like you can own the day with your reveal stream and then say tomorrow we have YouTuber and Twitch streamer coverage. And now you've owned 2 days. I just feel like keeping yourself relevant as long as possible is really important. I think they sort of shadowed over their own reveal and what was shown outside of their reveal was much better and easier to understand. But yeah, I kind of like the mixture of supernatural and third-person shooters. I think it's just kind of gelling with me well because it reminds me of what Bulletstorm, funny enough, did at just like an older time. I don't think it'll be a game that sets the world on fire, but conceptually, like you said, it does look and sound great. I sort of got that vibe from the initial trailer that we saw at E3 last year.
Yeah.
Just looked really different. And so I hope they sort of carry that as far as they can possibly go. All right. Anything else to say? Oh, sorry. I cut you off again, bro. I'm on a roll right now.
You were saying, is there anything else? So I just spoke too soon, but I was going to say that.
You read my mind?
I mean, I don't want to say I'm nervous about Square being the publisher, but I'm gonna say I'm nervous about Square being the publisher.
I would absolutely say that.
Yeah, I don't even know why. Maybe it's because it doesn't fit with their normal stuff. Like, yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go that this isn't what I expect. Like, so if you told me Techland was doing this, or THQ Nordic, in fact, THQ Nordic, this is their like this. I'd just be like, I get it.
Feels like it fits better. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool to see Square going out of their way to do something different, but Square isn't the greatest at supporting things like their E3 event where they just showed a video of some stuff. So hopefully maybe at this E3, if this is going to be a big game for them, you know, they should put some shit behind it because sometimes their games will come out and I'll be like, whoa, they have a game out?
Yeah,
like, I want to cover it. Tell me about it.
They're a really weird publisher, sorry. Think about it, right? Like, and they are given probably more good grace than anyone out there. They are
very much given good grace. Yeah.
Think of Kingdom Hearts, how long that took. Think of Final Fantasy 15, how long that took, and then the butchering that happened years after. Think of how long Final Fantasy 7 Remake took.
Mm-hmm.
Think of, what was the game they released last year that was kind of like Metal Gear? And it was really bad. I can't remember it for the life of me. But they released these offshoot third-person games that are terrible. Okay. They're publishing Avengers, which I'm sorry has... You know, I'll play it. I'll give it a chance. But the fucking character models are just absolute garbage in that game. And
pretty fucking heinous, isn't it?
Yeah, like, and here's the thing. They just showed off the box art, right? And I'm looking at it thinking, you know, ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why they put Captain America's mask on. And they put Iron Man's full fucking suit on in the background.
Right.
Because if any of those fuckers had their masks off, oh my God. They'd be like, a kid would pick it up and be like, God, it's a horror game. It's terrifying, man. So, but I'm trying to remember that third-person game that Square's also published last year that's reviewed terribly, by the way. Really, really bad. It was a stealth game without stealth mechanics. Like, you'd crouch and go behind someone for a stealth section, but you just have to beat the shit out of them and hope no one hears you. Like, you wouldn't like choke them out or stealthily take them down. And the third person shooting was horrible. Oh my god, this is bugging me now. I gotta look this up because this game
look it up. It wasn't Strange Brigade then.
Damn, my phone's listening to me. Suggested in the first thing suggested was Square Enix. That's so funny.
Maybe. Yeah,
they did publish Nier Automata.
Right.
They did publish
Nier
Automata.
They did.
Square Enix Games 2019. This should give us our answer. They did Oninaki, which was underrated. Left Alive. Have you seen that before? No, you haven't?
No, sorry for people listening. I'm shaking my head.
Karak was just confused. Oh man,
Left Alive, dude. I haven't even heard of that. Interesting.
Dude,
I'll have to check it out.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, just check it out when you get a chance. Oh my god, it just looks so terrible.
I mean, and that's the thing I'm hoping for these guys is that offering something different is great. So usurp my expectations of you would be cool. God dang, that dog is freaking out. But I think when it comes down to it, they just they don't have the best track record for getting data out there and or getting code early. Sometimes, like, you'll get code sometimes I can't tell if their PR people are just the last people to know anything, but you'll be like, dude, where's is there review code? And they'll be like, yep, here it is. And it's like 1 second before the game goes live or something. Sometimes it's a little odd.
Well, it's out in holiday 2020, and if you guys are interested, there's plenty of gameplay and impressions on YouTube to learn more. Those are just our hot takes. Now, let's get into BioWare's Anthem relaunch. They announced via a post on the BioWare site that they are going to be doing a substantial reworking of Anthem, something that they claim they could not do through a DLC or a expansion. They are just reworking the game. They said they're going to keep, doing some of their monthly events and whatnot, but for the most part, what they're doing here is just overhauling the game. And I don't think it's the best call. I made a whole video on it, so I'll probably be relatively quiet during this section. Karak, I just want to pass the ball to you again. Are you interested at all in an Anthem relaunch? Do you like the trend? Because 76 is doing a relaunch just in about 2 months. We're seeing these games come out, drop the ball, and immediately go, here's the bounce back. Just how do you feel about that standard that's been set and Anthem's potential in a relaunch?
I don't want any game to fail, so I'm okay with so it's weird. They said we're not really working anymore on the Anthem you guys have. We're going to make a new one, whatever. I guess they must feel that whatever their idea was is worth it, which to me, in a weird way, makes me more curious. I would never say, hey, you can't do it. And I've seen people be like, I hope they get shuttered and I hope this company, and I'm like, dude, seriously, it's a bad game. And you're talking to somebody who loved them in the old days. So to me, yeah, I'm interested, and I would like to see what their ideas are. I personally do believe that there must be something severely technically hampering them, especially because the quest would be 3 minutes long. And you'd be teleported back after seeing that weird scene where you'd all be standing there almost like a multiplayer game. Even though you were in single player moments at times, there was just a lot of oddities there. So overall, I'm actually interested in seeing it. I won't yearn for it, but there were times, Maddie, where I was playing Anthem, little small bits of time. I won't say more than 3 minutes, but there were little bits of time where I was having a blast. Little bits.
And the gameplay is fun. I think that's being in the
but
suit.
But it can't put it together.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll figure it out. I mean,
that's the thing is, I always said people thrash on Andromeda, and Andromeda from a story perspective and a world building perspective is, I think, a mess. But when it comes to the gameplay, I say it's fun as shit to play, and I think that I understand where you're coming from. Where I don't think it's a crazy thing to say Anthem was fun to control. I think that's where a lot of people's frustration stems from. They're like, damn, man, like this game could have been great because
just let me
it
play
is
the
fun
fucking
to
thing.
Control. Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is like a number of things. Like we read this whole huge write-up from Jason Schreier on the failure of Anthem and the troubled development it went through. You know, this game that we're talking about now was thrown together in 18 months after 7 years of production, which highlights a complete lie in the initial blog post from BioWare that they were going to be reworking this game because they said they wish they had initially a focused team to work on and iterate on the gameplay. And I'm just like, you had fucking almost 8 years. You had plenty of time to get it straight, but you could not. I just think there is a huge, and you know, I'll bite my tongue one last time until I see a little bit of Dragon Age 4. But I think when you look at Andromeda, which now the studio who worked on that kind of consolidated into another one, I think and then Anthem, of course, there is a huge design vision issue with this company that needs to be remedied. And I don't know what they got to do, but they need someone they need, like we were talking last week about Rod Ferguson. They need that type of guy who comes in and brings like stability and like veteran leadership. And I sound like I'm fucking talking about like a sports player, but like they need to bring a guy in who can get that type of job done. Like who can just right the ship and say like, this is where we're going. This is what we're building. Shut the fuck up. This is what we're doing. Like, and just go with that. Like the fact that this game had that many years and then they cite in their rework write-up trying to pretend that an article with almost 2 million fucking views doesn't exist, I think just shows how mismanaged this product has been from top to bottom.
Yeah, I didn't see the article, but
oh, worth a read for real. It's an essay and a half, man, but it's worth the read. It's pretty good stuff.
I mean,
I wouldn't say good, like it's fun, but
the he said she said stuff after a while I'm just like, okay, whatever. In the end, this is what we got. So like you said, like they wrote that they want to rework it. I agree with you that they have a systemic issue. What you're talking about when you said sports is really a head coach, which I would agree. I personally just, there's no other way PC politically correct way to say it, but I do believe that what we are getting is a lot of producers who are born in a generation of everybody's opinion matters. And my personal opinion is that is incorrect. So I don't care what the chef thinks if I'm rowing a boat. He's got no say. And I think what happens in games, especially in the producer standpoint, and this is something Cliff Basinski talked about, and he had a failed game even though he was, well, and he did this actually now that I think about it, but getting too much feedback. And you're hearing all this stuff about, you know, you need to have a character who can do this, you need to have this, you need to have this. And what happens is you have a master, or you have a character who's like a bard in D&D, which is where they basically know everything, but they're a master of no skill. They just know they can do a ton of general shit. And that's what we got with Dragon Age Inquisition. A ton of general shit. Was any of it terrible? No. It was just a ton of generalized shit. And that means if you have one bad thing, it brings it way lower than if you have even one good thing. Dragon Age Inquisition was lucky. It was all pretty bland. But then Anthem comes out and it had one or two good things, but they weren't great. And then everything else was bland, too terrible. And now we're looking at this gutted fucking IP that they have. So I personally do agree with you. I think they need a coach. But I don't know if EA can do that. I don't know if EA could hire Rod Ferguson because I think they're at the point now where they're so into getting everybody's input, whether it be alpha testers, early reviewers, all this stuff that they're getting all these
Game Changers program.
The Game Changers, exactly, stuff like that, to where instead of, because if you wrote a novel, it would be intrinsically different than if you wrote a novel and for every single page asked me my opinion on 3 parts of it. It would be different. And it would be less surprising to me. It would be less interesting to me. It would be there. How would you surprise me if I knew every page? And that's what's happening with games now. There is no surprise. There is no sharp edge. There is no golf because they're so worried about there being one that they neuter it and they mow it down. And I don't think they can. I don't think they can hire Rod Ferguson. I honestly don't. I just don't think they have it in their corporate structure anymore. Sadly.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's something I never even considered. It's funny because I'm not saying you did, but like EA is very quick to receive the blame for just anything
Yeah,
that they're
right.
remotely involved in. They're an easy scapegoat, an easy target. But once again, we go back to the Jason Schreier article and you see that they got 7 years, and I'm like, is EA really a fucking problem at that point for them if they can't figure something out in that allotted time? That's what I always just wonder about Anthem. People are very quick to go EA, 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 and I'm like, yeah, okay, fair. They suck, but like, they really just let them try to figure it out, and they didn't. And like, that's when they come in and go like, all right, we need something. Like, we need something to work with here, and I think that's fair at that point. I know it's very hard to make EA look good, but like, what do people expect? Quite frankly, and so I just think the Anthem relaunch is not the right course of action. I mean, like you said, what
would you rather have them do? Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I was gonna say I think it's kind of like you said, where it's interesting that they believe in their idea so much that they're gonna go for it. I think that's kind of cool, right? It's kind of like watching an underdog say, like, we'll go to the sports example, underdog team, kind of playoff fringe team, saying we're gonna trade for the best guy on the market and we're gonna fucking get him and we're gonna push our way in. I think that's kind of what's interesting about Anthem. But at the same point, what I would suggest is Anthem, just chalk it up, right? Like, and I'm not saying I'm not like Mr. Give It Up, right? But in a business world and in a entertainment world, when you had that much time to get Anthem right, to get it out, and it still didn't work, and updates came out and it still didn't work, it's not like you didn't try, right? It's not like you guys gave up, which, kudos to you. That's a good thing. They gave it their all, and that's great. But now that you've tried and it didn't work, I feel like you're bashing your head against the wall by doing a rework and trying to get something working here. When it's not that the idea can't work, but you need to start from the ground up and make a whole fucking game now.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the Frostbite engine issues that really plague the development of this, I don't see how it's just feasible unless you take more years to make it. And at that point, I would rather say leave Anthem, take those resources that we were just about to dump into a rework, pour it all into Dragon Age. And I'm not just saying this because I love RPG BioWare, who made some of my favorite games, but go in on and be like the fucking company that killed it with RPGs. Like, you're still known as an RPG developer. Even with Anthem, you're still known as a role-playing game developer. And if that's not their calling, in the sense of like that's where their passion's at, they're not into that, then that's one thing. But we already know they are developing Dragon Age 4, so they have some type of interest in it. I don't see what's stopping them from saying, let's take this money. We know Dragon Age is a very successful IP, arguably as popular as Mass Effect, maybe a little less so, and just pour the money into that, man. Take those rework resources and pour it into that, because it's not going to be cheap. That's the thing. Reworking a game it's not just a patch. It's not just an update.
Yeah.
It's not just DLC, which is also expensive. It's not an expansion, which is even more expensive. It is reworking from the ground up an entire video game. Even if Anthem isn't the biggest game, it's still a game with a lot of baked-in problems. And at that point, I feel like a lot can get lost in translation, and you might just want to chalk it up, say, hey, we'll get back to this series. Kind of like what happened with Rage, right? Rage we thought was dead and gone. Never going to see a sequel. No one really expected a sequel. And they come back with Rage 2, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I thought Rage 2 was fantastic. But, they tried the idea when it was right for the studio, and I don't think they're trying it at the right time. I really, really think it would be more advised to, what I imagine will happen anyway, is remaster Mass Effect, focus in on Dragon Age, just center yourself.
Do you know what would be, I think, what would be one of the coolest things to happen? It won't. Imagine if they were like, yeah, we're redoing Anthem, and a year or two passes, and suddenly a KOTOR / Mass Effect / Dragon Age game comes out that's called like Anthem. And it's where it's party based, but you have the robots you get into, and it's like you're a warrior. And instead of disregarding the world that I think they're pretty bought into, the fiction of the world, it sounds like they're pretty. And instead say, because we've seen first person shooters and RPGs in the same game world, so it's like that would be cool if they were like, okay, this isn't working. and then suddenly everybody thought they were going one way, and they're like, well, that didn't work. Here's like a new, because Mass Effect, I think Mass Effect's gone for a while. Dragon Age, they can do whatever they want. I would be excited to see another one. But I also would love to see them do what they did with Jade Empire, which is a world I didn't, I was just like, wait, what? Like Chinese and steampunk? So if they said Anthem, but KOTOR, that would get I would legitimately be like, wait, what are they doing? And instead, it's that completely different format, this format we expect, flesh out the world, and then maybe get some people to buy off on the IP and then go back to the multiplayer later. But like I said, probably won't happen. Dragon Age is probably what we're going to see.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like what's weird about Anthem is it's not like the existing game is making up the ground, right? Like, you can't even argue, I feel, that EA saying, you're going to make this overhaul because we need to recoup assets, because you guys spent a shit ton of time and money getting this project going, right? Like, it's not even like the game is currently existing and generating revenue, and all you have to do to figure that out is look at where Anthem is, in the sense that people discovered 2.5 months after the fact that the Christmas lights were still up in the game. It's not about the fact that the lights are up. Think of how long it took for someone to realize it. And then imagine how few people are playing and how little money is being translated into the game. Or I'm sorry, how much money how many players are translating into money spent, rather. The short answer is it's really not. So it's not like they're making money on it. So why are you going to now put yourself in a further deficit with this game?
Oh, because no, Matty, I absolutely firmly believe that they have IP growth built into the Anthem movies.
Oh, you think like it's
I
designed
firmly
to
believe
be
that.
way bigger?
I firmly believe. I do believe that. Yeah, sorry, I should have made that clear. The reason why I think they're sticking, because you're right. Because you look at it and you're like, well, obviously it's not making money. So what do? You curb it. You're like, it ain't working.
Well, because they did that with Mass Effect, right? Like, that's the thing.
Right. But with Anthem in particular, it's mechs and it's people. It's a little bit less scientific-y than Mass Effect. My personal opinion is that there was a plan for books, anime, Netflix specials. I believe EA, Activision, all of them are looking for that. Destiny has tried to be it, and I just don't think it's ever going to recoup. I just don't think Destiny will be what they wanted, ever. But that was where they were aiming for Destiny. And that is where absolutely I think that EA is looking at Anthem as doing that currently. And they think probably it fits more than Dragon Age, even though Witcher has showed fantasy works, and so has Game of Thrones. And they feel it probably works better than Mass Effect. But with Anthem, I do. I think they're thinking Pacific Rim, like mechs and people and robots and Iron Man and Avengers. And here's our water cooler moment.
Interesting thoughts. Yeah, no, it's definitely possible that they were thinking it could be much bigger and they could just essentially make money hand over fist.
Yeah,
no problem. Yeah. If it gets to that point, it's not such a far cry, right? Like, because like you said, the game's fun. It's just a matter of like getting to the part where the game's good, and then the game has to not only be good, because there are plenty of good games out there that aren't recognized, so that you would get to that popularity level.
Look at Division 2. There's a game that is amazing, is legitimately good, and no one talks about it, even with the new expansion.
It was available for $3 the other day.
I think that was because the expansion being announced. I could be wrong, but it seemed like a weird price timing.
That's such a steal.
yeah, definitely people should get it.
Yeah, highly recommend it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening right now, $3 for that game is steal. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about State of Decay 2. Karak, this is all yours, man.
Yeah, so State of Decay 2, let me bring this up. Juggernaut edition. This will be March 13th, I believe. Let me check the diddly
Another
dates.
March game. Oh.
Yeah. And so this is not a small thing. It's not like a typical, I guess you would say, like special edition that's got like a fucking fixed map. It's State of Decay Juggernaut edition. It's free for anybody who owns the game. If you don't own the game and you buy it in the future, after this date comes, you'll just be buying the Juggernaut edition. So what it is It is launching on Game Pass as well as Steam March 13th. They have a brand new open world map, twice as big as any other map. It's a logging town named Providence. They've rebuilt the entire tutorial experience to teach players more of the facets. They've got a completely new category of heavy weapons. They've got new skills. They've got new graphical improvements, including redone lighting engine and foliage optimization for better performance, which is probably one of the major ones. They've also adjusted the commands, so now stealth and dodge are a completely different part of the controller, because they were actually a little bit like what Matty was saying, where sometimes you go in a stealth game, you go behind the person instead of doing anything, you just beat them up. And that was happening in that game. They've also went in and redone missions, redone gameplay bugs to ensure a better experience. They've also redone the audio, which was having issues, and they've also doubled the total amount of music tracks in the game. It will also include all of the expansions for free. So, yeah, they
free on Game Pass.
They state very, very clearly that the only way this was possible is because it's a Game Pass game. It literally opens up with, there is absolutely no way this would be done without any other type of support other than Game Pass. Like, their success on Game Pass is like Sea of Thieves. It's ridiculous. And I talked to the PR person there about this, because we were supposed to announce it on the podcast, and they forgot about me. I'll admit it. They forgot. They were talking to me, and then,
hey, we've been there.
But I do talk to them. I've met her multiple times, and it's basically made that company the ability to like look in the future and decide how they're going to place things and give people what they want, adjustments they want, and not small stuff, which I sort of dig. Because how many times have we got that fucking like Assassin's Creed Assassination Edition, and it's just the game with like its DLC, right? And you're all, but that's just a box with the same shit in it. And
so is it replacing the original map from State of Decay 2?
No, it's just adding another huge one.
See, that's
It's
incredible.
awesome.
I feel like anytime we've talked about this game on the show, it's always like a very meaty update.
Yeah.
It's never been, and it comes with the expansion. Wow,
it comes with all the expansions for free.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, and the thing is like, especially with those guys, at least I feel with those guys, every expansion I've got from them, whether it's for you or not, because I didn't like one, it wasn't for me, but I saw who it was for. It was for the multiplayer people, the more horde kind of gamer, because there was a horde mode style thing. It wasn't a small thing. It was like a huge amount of things. Even though it was a huge amount for somebody else, I could still look at it and be like, damn. Like it's like the Lego edition for Forza. It's not for me, but I see it and I'm like, dude, if I was a Lego fan, that shit would be fucking incredible. So yeah, it's awesome, man. It's so cool. And the idea that it's launching pretty quickly is also not, it's not a long wait.
Yeah, State of Decay is a blast. I highly recommend it to anyone who's got a PC or Xbox or Game Pass. It is a really good time. I have a review up, and I know Karak does as well, for the State of Decay 2. I also have like old impressions of the first one, if that matters. But yeah,
the old 360 or was
it, when it was just like an arcade game or whatever,
yep.
The Xbox Live arcade game. Yeah, that game had its hooks in me that summer.
Me too.
I loved the original, man. That shit was so fun.
15 frames per second.
Yeah, but still, it was like charming because it was $20.
It was awesome.
Yeah, but I admittedly haven't played as much of the second one as the first one, just because, quite honestly, I don't game on my PC because I work on it a lot, so I don't want to just be attached to it 24/7. And then with Xbox, I don't use my Xbox. My friends are on PlayStation, so I just go on there. So for me, it's kind of like what you said. You can look from afar and be like, damn. And so that's sort of what it is with State of Decay 2. But I do have that hands-on time where it's fuck, man. It is fun. For those who don't know, it's a really dynamic game. So you'll be kind of like exploring house to house, and you're like, oh, it's another zombie looter. But if you like loot too fast and you make noise, the zombies will like come in on you. And it's not like the most robust combat system where you can just hack and slash your way out. Like, it's a very human element to it. You're not some super powered person. And what happens is, as you like do things in the world, your character gets its skills up. But if they die, they're permanently gone. That's it.
Yeah.
It's over. And that's what's kind of like the thrill factor of exploring, because at night it gets more dangerous. Your backpack gets loaded up. You're running a little slower. As you drive around too, that's the other issue, is you can really alert the wrong types of people. So it's just such a fun, dynamic game.
I think the skills are also cool because every person feels different. So if one does die, like, and you can make them a mayor of your little like fort, and then their major skill goes to everybody. And if they die, not only do they die, their skills are gone, but then their attitude is different. So if that guy's attitude is to raise up everybody's morale and it drops low, people start getting in fights. You'll hear them arguing with each other. You have to kill your own people. I don't know if you ever got to that point.
Yeah, the euthanize option. Yeah, I'm just like, what?
Yeah, when he's like, I'm bitten.
Dark.
I'm bitten. I need medicine. I'm like, we ain't got time to get medicine, baby. It's just like that shit was, and it shows it. Like, it wasn't pulling any punches. It was like, it didn't show you shoot. It did the pan away right when you fired. But it was like, it was in your face, man. And a bunch of base building and collection. And the world has specific amounts of stuff so you can run out. It's just, it is the game if you like those kind of things.
And what's important to note is it's not like every time you spawn, I think it is this way. Every time you spawn in, the map's completely different. Like things are hand placed. Like I think the loot's generated, but like I think the world itself, the way it's built, it's not like procedural generation. Which
you can now choose the DLC added a map that is, so you can do both.
Okay, so yeah, see, I think I'm just speaking for people who share my line of thought. There are games like Risk of Rain and Slay the Spire, which are like procedural generation on steroids. They're fun as fuck. But there's some experiences that I don't think are as enticing. If you hear like zombies, procedural generation, I think it could be a turnoff. So just for those who don't know, there is options for that.
And you did know that the DLC added the original town, right?
No.
That the first DLC they ever did adds the 360 version's town. So you actually start...
Goddamn.
You actually play that game in State of Decay 2, basically. Different characters, but you start out at the base by the church that you would drive down the hill and everything.
Do they connect in the sense where could you start in that DLC essentially in State of Decay 1 and then go into the State of Decay 2 map and then into the new one? That's fucking awesome.
You basically collect those resources and then try to get on the bus, and then the bus goes to the next city, which is the next map, which then you do that one and then it can go to the next map, and then you can choose the procedural. Yep. Very cool stuff.
Glad you shared that. High recommendations from both of us on that game. It's really fun. All right. With that out of the way, we now get into patron questions. Let's see how many we've got today. Holy crap, there's a lot. Okay. Let's start off with Vault 101 guy who's got a couple of VR questions. We love VR questions here. Number one, with Oculus Quest introducing hand tracking a while ago, do you think it could be used in VR games on that system?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's inherently built for VR. Number two, have you tried Oculus Link yet? I'm wanting to buy a few Rift games, but I'm afraid I won't have a good experience. I have an i5, 1060 GTX, and 8 gigabytes of RAM. So is the Link like a more condensed one? I've heard of the Quest. I've never heard of the Link.
So the Quest allows the Link allows the Quest to be plugged into a PC.
Okay.
So so now the Quest, this is why a lot of Rift S owners are mad, because the Quest was supposed to be standalone and it was less powerful. Makes sense, it's its own little processor, but at some point Facebook decided to allow the Link, which is a cable that will now plug in your Quest to your PC's video card. So you can use it.
It's a little more of a buff.
Yeah, the problem is I have heard some people have had issues with a little bit of latency because you are not just going straight into the visor. You're actually going into the CPU, which then has to do some shit and then goes into the visor because the Quest was already doing its thing. But overall, it seems to work well. I mean, I think the biggest issue is it. I think people aren't in love with the cable itself, but that happens a lot of times. Nobody loves the cables.
No, you just look like an alien with a cable.
Yeah, fucking out of the back of your head, moving you around.
I'm guessing it's more cost efficient. I know the Quest is cheaper, but is the Link combined with that like the ultimate cheap option for that VR headset?
Yeah, I don't know if it's cheaper than the Rift by itself. I don't remember the cost of the Rift by itself, but it's just another option they offer, and then there's some differences between the two on the screen for sure, like the fidelity of the screen.
Interesting. You think this person would? I don't think that sounds like a VR rig. An i5 1060 GTX and 8 GB of RAM.
Oh no, they're fine.
You think they're fine? Okay.
Yeah, Takedown.
That's what I know.
The guy who no. Well, you're right if you're thinking Fallout. I should make that clear actually. So if you're talking Fallout, you might have issues, but Takedown played with a 1050 Ti, and he was playing with an i5. Like his shit was ancient, and there's some tricks you have to do for some of the more advanced games like reprojection, but the game will tell you. Like there's options. You just click a button.
Let's say you wanted to play like Boneworks.
Feasible? Totally fine. Totally fine.
Okay, yeah, cool. Then you're
Half-Life
good, man.
Alyx, totally fine. Yeah, it's just
Perfect.
the high definition. Skyrim might give him, depending on what mods might give him some issues.
Awesome. All right, there you go. You should be set, Vault 101 guy. I hope you enjoy your VR headset. Of course, do tests or look up people testing it on weaker hardware. You can easily find videos to see and key in on performances. Don't use websites like canirunit.com and shit like that.
They're not even real.
It's not gonna help you out. Natural Calamity asks us, you are now a writer on the supposed KOTOR remake, and you are put up to the task to do some of the companions. What would be their place in society, and what would be their overarching story? So it sounds like we're creating just a unique individual companion for a KOTOR remake. There's no HK, there's no Bastila. What are you doing? I got one in mind.
Go for it.
So I thought of this because of the cover of the original KOTOR. It has the Cellcath on the front that they never used. This was a companion in the game that was cut. If I were to put a companion in the game, though, I always said it would be a Cellcath because most races are accounted for in the KOTOR party or in some way, shape, or form. The major ones, at least. I would say it would be really neat to find the Cellcath in the underwater Manon base. He's one of the Cellcath who's losing his mind. And you're presented with an option similar to Juhani, where you can lead them down one path or the other. Juhani you can kill or have her join your party. Same thing with the Cellcath. He started losing his mind because he's been trapped down there for so long. He's watching fellow Cellcath kill humans, and he's like, what's going on? And you sort of have to like talk him off the ledge a little bit and get him to trust you. And his overarching story, I don't know, that requires a lot more thought. I'm way too thorough in a number of ways to just slap that together. But at least the initial introduction and how you meet this unique companion, I could envision immediately what I would do. I think that would be a natural place to fill him in. He'd slot right into the party. And in setting wise too, it's not like he's just out in the city and you're like, hey, what's up? I'm going to join you guys. Kind of like even the Outer Worlds is guilty of. Like right away, Felix is like, yeah, I'll tag along with you. Your ship's cool, man. It's like, yeah, this is why you fucking suck. But, I think that would be a natural way of meeting him in terms of like overarching story and how he ties in what this Cellcath does. I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. Maybe Karak could.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I would have to know like what exactly if the story was identical, then it would be weird to just have not the same NPCs. So like I wouldn't even know how to answer that because my idea would be along the lines of like adjusting things that fit with the current NPC. Like if you want to add an NPC to the current ones, I could do that. But the idea of like them not being the same ones, I
got one. I got a really good one actually. Okay, sticking with the Cellcath thing, there's a part in KOTOR where this has to happen every single time in the playthrough. It's part of the main story. You break into a Sith base. When you leave, you're put on trial. If you fail the trial, you die. Also, one of the Cellcath does offer to essentially, lawyer you, and I forgot what his exact term was for KOTOR, but he wants to support you in your case. Now, let's say that our new companion, instead of finding him in the underwater base, he is the man trying to lawyer you. So what happens is you step into the courtroom, he's at your back, you guys work the system.
Right.
Afterwards, he gets jumped, right? Like you're walking around the streets of Manon, going to your next main story point, and you see him under attack. So you go in, you save him maybe, or you let him die. You could let him die, and that's it. He doesn't join your party. So you jump in, you save him. He's like, oh man, either how can I thank you, or similar to how Zalbar was, you save his life. He's kind of like, I owe you a life debt. I don't think that's built into the Cellcath people. So it's something along the lines of maybe you could hire him, quote, hire him to join you on your intergalactic adventure in case you need a little more representation legally, and you teach them how to fight. And the story is teaching him how to go from lawyer to combat specialist. There's my overarching story on how he ties into the narrative.
There you go. Works perfect.
All right. Great Ape has a number of questions for us. Have either of you guys checked out the newest DLC for Metro Exodus? I finished the base game last month and really enjoyed my time with it.
Negative. Didn't even know it was coming out until either the night before or the day it came out.
Yeah, I had no idea about this DLC either. I hate to break your heart, Great Ape. I wasn't the biggest fan of Metro Exodus anyway, so even if I knew, I probably wasn't trying to play it just because that game didn't really click with me. I didn't have a great experience with it. It's not that it's a bad game. I just didn't have a great experience with it. I've gone on about it multiple times. I made a whole review video on it. But yeah, I haven't checked out the DLC. Don't really have an interest to, and I don't think I will. And number 2 from Great Ape. For someone who never played the original Half-Life, what version would you recommend? The original Source version or Black Mesa Fan Remake? I would say the original just because it's free now, and I know that's probably what Valve's considering with Half-Life Alyx. So if you're looking from that perspective, that's probably lore-wise at least the way you want to go for it. In terms of enjoyment, I don't really know. Because I haven't played a lot of Half-Life in my day. I played it on the Orange Box collection on the 360? Right. That's where I played Half-Life for the first time. And I'm going to replay it with a buddy of mine before Alyx comes out on PC. Because like I said, all the Half-Life games are free currently for those who haven't played them. You have any knowledge on this? Or have you
I've played them multiple times. I don't really know much about Black Mesa other than it's a remake and like with improved graphics. So as long as it doesn't switch anything major, then
yeah,
you could probably play that. But yeah, unfortunately, I just don't know enough about what it added because I am not a Half-Life lover like a lot of people at all. I thought Half-Life was good, but not good enough to revisit tons of times. So I haven't revisited the remake.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I wasn't like really infatuated with it when I played it, but it's been a number of years. Number 3 is, do you ever feel bogged down from a game's core gameplay loop by extra upgrade systems or collectibles? Brothers, your favorite, or Journey were excellent, pure experience without any overall overly gamey elements. Playing Doom 2016 right now and a bit surprised by the amount of upgrades and secret collectibles. I was expecting more mindless running and gunning. Definitely have had to change my approach to the game. So have you ever had that where like a game's gaminess, as Great Ape would put it, its gameplay loop of upgrades and collectibles have gotten in the way or felt maybe out of place?
They've gotten in the way if they can get in the way. But what he's talking about, like just because they're there, like a secret or collectibles, fuck, I don't care. I'll just run right to the end. Unless just ignore it. So, but yeah, for sure. Like Final Fantasy games, a lot of times. Final Fantasy always loves to have the 3 or 4 different fucking systems. Every game. They're like, hey, look at our magic system. Hey, look at our fucking cards. Look at us. You raise plants. You can fucking breed animals. And at some point, about the 5th side thing, I'm like, Jesus Christ. Cooking in particular. I know that people like that, but I would say almost every game's cooking systems, I don't want anything to do with them. And I didn't in Final Fantasy either. It's so fucking stupid to me. I hate those systems. I don't think there's been a cooking system I've liked in a game.
I'm trying to think. Breath of the Wild was
the cooking system was
because you could hold like the ingredients in your hand, so that was kind of the cool part, and just throw them in the fire and see what you make.
Oh, that's at least you're interacting.
Yeah, like I like that. I thought that was fun. Final Fantasy 15 had an okay food system, but a gameplay experience where upgrades and collectibles felt like maybe it sounds like it just like what you're saying is out of place. I would say in Berseria, it's a JRPG, and when you run around, there's just these fucking orbs that you grab, and you use them to unlock these cat's chests, these pink chests, and I'm just like, I get it. You know that your world is open and kind of empty because the game was made very quickly, but it's such a weird design choice. That's how like you're gonna fill it out. I'm not saying add quests or anything because obviously, once again, they're on a time constraint. They can't do that. I would just rather leave it empty. And because what happens is you need these orbs because they open chests with like valuable loot. So sometimes you'll just run like completely out of place just because of your OCD almost, and it's like inevitable. Like everyone gets hit by it. So I think for that was what affected me.
Kakarot with those fucking orbs.
Yeah, it's something with Bandai games. BryPry159, one of my very good friends in real life, said, "Yo, Matt, I got a question. Do you think they'll bring GameCube games to the Switch?" I think you're in luck, Brian. I've heard rumors.
You cut out
like
just
many.
For a second. Does he think we'll bring what?
GameCube games will be put on the Switch. GameCube, not Wii U ports. Now, there were rumors that Super Mario Sunshine was to come to the Switch.
Ooh.
Who knows if that ends up being true? I'm not saying like, I heard from a source, by the way. I got to make that super clear. I'm just saying what I've read online is that Super Mario Sunshine could be one of the games that make its way to the Switch. And it would make sense because Odyssey was a huge hit. Even if it was it was a great game. I beat it. First Mario game I beat in a very long time. But it was a little overrated. But yeah, I think the other one that's going to be coming, although I don't think this was this wasn't a GameCube game, but games were on the GameCube, was Metroid Prime, and the trilogy definitely has to be coming at some point soon. I'm sure they're just... I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo's just sitting on that game. Like, it's done. It's ready to go. And they're just waiting for when they're closer to Prime 4 to release the trilogy and then be like, all right, 4 is coming in the next year or something. So I'd imagine games like that you can expect on the Switch. Plus, man, the Switch controller controls a lot better than the GameCube controller, so I feel like a shooter might feel better on that.
Yeah, true.
Personally, for me.
True.
Droop Snoot has a question for us. Great name. What are some characteristics you want to see in more video game protagonists? I want more fat and ugly looking characters. Let's be honest, at least half of us are fat and ugly, so it makes sense. What about you? You got any desires for protagonists? I've always been a believer of what is the creator, what fits their vision. I've always just been that. And maybe that's a very neutral standpoint. It kind of avoids any debates, any arguments, but it's just genuinely what I believe. It's always been what I've said. Just make who the fuck you want and make me care about them. That's the point of it, I think.
Yeah, I don't really have, just saying any like traits, like, I mean, like, what kind of trait would that even be?
I mean, I would say more redheads, but they got Cal Kestis now.
Right, there you go.
Cameron Monaghan represented me pretty well.
Right. Yeah, I don't really have any requests other than like, no, I don't have a specific request. I will say though that I think we're past the point of like, if a game is a shooter or whatever and it's not distinctly really tied to the main protagonist, I would like both sexes to be in the game. I think it's overtly just causing more issues, even just in this political time frame. It's like, if you get like Zombie War 4, it had male and female, but I'm saying if it didn't, I could see people being like, why? Because there's no real reason it shouldn't. That kind of stuff I would like to see in my games, as long as that single player character, like you said, isn't intrinsically connected to the story and the writers like trying to explain what it's like to be a young male in in Primal or a young female in Horizon Zero Dawn. I would like to see that, but I can't really think of anything. I mean, there's so many there's so many games. There's Kleptomaniacs. There's Binding of Isaac, where you're chasing after the chick and you find out you're a stalker. Was that Binding of Isaac?
I don't know. I've never even played that game.
Okay,
honestly.
there's a
really
platformer, and I can't remember which one it is. You think you're saving some chick, you get to the end and you find out like she's fucking legitimately freaked out by you and has been running away through the entire game, like Princess Peach is trying to escape Mario, kind of thing.
Oh.
So we've got so many that I don't see that there's some gulf. Some trait. I haven't seen one yet.
Yeah.
At least.
My big thing used to be like the voice actors. There was a period of time, and everyone goes to it. I think it's kind of overblown now, but like it was always feeling like you'd hear Nolan North or Troy Baker. And
right.
I just kind of like I wanted more voice actor and actress variety. Give smaller talents a try who are they may be smaller in size, but they might have even more talent. And I wanted that. it seemed like every game was like the same list of voice actors and actresses, like Matt Mercer's every game. And I'm happy to see that's changed. So that would be my number one thing for protagonists and whatnot. Just games in general, I think, would benefit from that. And it has, I feel. You've seen a lot of great new talent rise up. One of the people who, or the person who's voicing Aerith in Final Fantasy VII Remake, like, she made YouTube videos before she got cast. Like, that's awesome. She's a smaller talent, but she sounds like she's doing a good job. Like, that's so cool, I think.
Yeah, so, I agree.
That type of stuff's what I look for. Of course, representation's great too. I also think it's got to fit a vision, though.
Yep.
But yeah, in a situation like what you said, where it's like a zombie army game, it's like, yeah, male, female, whatever else.
Yeah.
Throw it in there. Crazy Herb. I've recently been playing Half-Life for the first time, and while certain aspects of the game hold up, much of it feels dated. Are there any iconic games that you didn't play until much later, and how much of it did it hurt your experience? Ooh. Classic game I hop back to. I got one, but you can go first if you got one.
Mario 64, because I didn't play that right away.
Okay. What about it? Was it just the way it controls?
Camera was a big deal. The camera in that game is pretty hot pig shit. Like, it's pretty fucking terrible. And when I see anybody try to like talk it up as some classic, I'm like, maybe for its time, but we have to talk about like its issues, and it definitely has some. There was that, and then there was, usually it's big classic games for example, Metal Gear. Man, I don't understand how anybody thinks Metal Gear games are good. They're fucking terrifying bad. The old ones in
Metal Gear or Metal Gear Solid, the original.
I should say the one that was like on 85 Blu-rays on the PS3. That fucking game is terrible. 3. I think that's 4. 3. Is it 4?
4 is, you said Blu-ray, right? So that would be 4 because that was PS3.
Okay, yeah, and it's
or
like
Phantom Pain.
No, Phantom Pain I was okay with. I didn't love it, but it was good. I was fine with it.
So then it's probably 4.
But dude, it's so pretentious and poorly done that it shocks, and poorly done. Lie all you want and pretend it's good. It's not. It is a poorly done game from start to finish. Poorly fucking done. That blew me away. But that's because I didn't play it. I'm not caught up in the cocksucking. Like, I don't care about that. I don't care who he is. I don't care who makes the fucking game. So I just play the game to play the game. The game was legitimately fucking piss poor. There you go. Man. Sorry, hot take.
No, that's fine. That's what our show's about. I would say, for me, Golden Sun. I'm enjoying it though.
Whoa, what'd you say? Sorry, what'd you say?
Golden Sun.
I thought you said GoldenEye. Okay, continue.
No, holy shit.
I thought you said GoldenEye, and I was like, whoa, this is gonna be a harsh podcast.
That one I was late to, and I stand by. Like, anyone who tries to tell me this is a definitive shooter, I'm like, dude, go try to play a first-person shooter on the fucking N64 with one analog stick, and let me know how that works. Yeah, you have to play like a fucking crab. So. With that in mind, Golden Sun is my choice. It's one I was late to. I'm playing it for the first time this year. I'm impressed by the dungeon design. It's got some aging issues with like just vague, like not even, because people always go like, oh, this game doesn't hold your hand, and that's why it's so good. Games aren't made like that nowadays. And I'm like, dude, stop. It was fucking bad design. Just because, like, for example, Golden Sun just assumes that after like a certain point in the game, go back to your village. Like no narrative points, no like hidden dialogue.
Sure.
You just end up having to just venture out, find your way back to your town, and the story picks back up. And it's like, I got there, I'm like, how I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, oh, maybe it's just an extra scene. I'm like, oh no, they're continuing the main story. Like, and that shouldn't happen. It should never happen. There are games like Divinity Original Sin 2, which, don't hold your hand, but they do it in a constructive manner where they lead, same thing with Dark Souls, I think. Like, they lead you into it. And I'm not talking about Dark Souls story, by the way. My God. But I'm talking about just like the way they lead the player from place to place. They let a sense of discovery and exploration be there. And they leave it to your intelligence. But they, part of good design is to pull the player to the next location, to the next quest. It doesn't mean that they have to have a marker on their head. Sometimes it's just art. It's lighting. Shine the light on this person in this alley here, and the player will be like, "What the fuck's that?" And they go in the alley, like that type of shit. But anyway, off track. Yeah, Golden Sun's the one that I got to. That was pretty late. Did it hurt my experience? Yeah, in a number of ways. It's a Game Boy game, but I kind of like sprite-based RPG, so I'm a little more forgiving. Big Bad Wolf Hish. Have you ever been hooked on a game, but after a certain point, the drive to continue just stops altogether? There have been a couple of times I was very close to finishing a game, but once I got to a certain point, I didn't want to play it anymore. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't want the game to end, and that was my way of avoiding it. Oh, you know, as a creator, right? Like I talk about most games I play, and what I've noticed is the podcast, if I'm allowed to talk about it, by the way, if I'm reviewing it, different situation, and I'll get into that in a sec. The podcast is usually my testing grounds. When I talk about it, I get excited about it. Do I have that desire to go home and then play it? Because sometimes you just want to tell someone about it, right? And we're lucky enough to have a platform where we can tell thousands of people how great we think some games are and how bad some are. And so for me, when I talk about it, I splurge about it. Do I feel that desire, especially in a dedicated video? And so what I'll do sometimes, and it's going to sound like a little psychopath, but I'll actually script and record an audio for like a review or a discussion piece on a game, leave it, and see if I want to go back and play it. And if I do, then I feel convinced of my emotions for that game and what was captured in the commentary, and I go forth from there. So for me, the test is putting it out into the world and seeing if once I've yelled about it, you know, even sometimes it doesn't have to be a vocal recording. I'll tell my friends about it. Do I have that desire to go back to it? So for me, I have had those times where I'm like, I'll talk about a game a lot. And as you discuss, like Karak and I have had plenty of discussions where you start to air out some of the design problems, some of the environmental issues, some of the gameplay problems, the hooks or the snags. And then eventually you realize, this isn't as good as I thought. And I think you don't get to that point sometimes unless you are able to have people who can have that discussion. So for me, those are the testing grounds. But they're definitely, and sometimes that can just kill the drive where you're like, yeah, you go back, you pick it up, you're like, yeah, this isn't as good.
So he's asking if there's just ever been a game we've played and then stopped playing?
Yeah, like the drive just kind of disappears. Like he says, a game that you've been hooked on, and at a certain point, the drive to continue just stops altogether.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple of times I was very close to finishing a game. I have a friend, by the way, who played Tales of Berseria and got 35 hours in. He was literally in the area before the final boss and did not finish it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It just happens. It's weird, but it just happens.
Yeah, I've definitely.
Have you ever had that?
Yeah, I've definitely had games where I just have been playing and for whatever reason it just dies. I mean, I would say I've had tons of games like that. Like it just, when it comes to review, no, because you're reviewing them. But when it comes to like even like let's say there's a little bit of dead time and I turn on a game, I'll be playing a game and be so into it. And a lot of times my personal belief is that because games are interactive, it doesn't require the completion of it if you're getting fun out of it on your weekend and you still get your money out of it. So like if I bought a game for $20 on Steam and I play it for Saturday, I don't feel a drive. So if I buy a book, I usually feel a drive to finish it because I get invested in it. But a lot of games don't invest me like a book does. So I'm just bouncing off, some cool characters, and I'm just having a good time. Yeah, in no way, shape, or form do I feel like stressed about finishing them. So there was a lot where I'm just like, if I'm not covering it or whatever, I'm like, I'll probably never play it again. But I still don't feel ripped off either.
Yeah. Important to differentiate that. Benjam says, or asks rather, if someone offered you a paid vacation to go anywhere in the country, where would you go? Country.
I mean, it probably means the world, right?
I'm gonna stay country.
So United States only?
Yes.
Arizona. I would go to the Grand Canyon.
Oh, okay. Why would you pick that?
Because I haven't gone there and I like Red Dead.
All right.
Yeah, I almost went there prior to starting the channel. I actually got sick prior to the trip, called off from the trip and stayed at work and was laid off the week I was supposed to be gone. So in a way, I'm sort of happy I wasn't gone. Can you imagine that kind of trip? If like you're gone, you get the phone call being like, no need to come back.
Oh, God. I would go to maybe I'd probably go to Minnesota. They got the huge mall there. It's a hockey place. Yeah. I think they have the huge mall in Minnesota, like Great Mall of America, I think it's called, or something like that. And so yeah, that would probably be the place I'd go to. Like I said, it's a hockey place too. I love hockey, so like it just kind of fits. But immediately what came to mind is Texas because the food there is so good. It's so friggin' good.
If I was married,
oh sorry,
if I was not married, fucking Texas.
Texas, yeah,
dude.
I already know where you're going with this. I already know where you're going with this without even opening.
I don't know what magic exists there, Maddie, but what magic exists there truly does, and it's magical, and I'm not lying about it. It's magical, hot beyond the beliefs of mortal man, crazy as fuck. But every person I've ever met who's there, who's worked for me, worked at my companies, or I've met, has been a fucking downright smoke show.
Last question comes from JK1107. What are your thoughts on Drew Karpyshyn, former lead writer of BioWare, joining Wizards of the Coast's new studio Archetype? What types of projects are you hoping to see from the studio? Do you think BioWare losing 3 veterans who will now join the studio will affect the quality of any future projects, such as Dragon Age 4? This is probably something we should have talked about in the news cycle, but here we are now. What do you think about Drew Karpyshyn joining on? For those who don't know, helped write KOTOR, a lot of BioWare's great games. I think he worked on Mass Effect as well. So he was around for a lot of their strong titles, helping write those.
But I think he's also the one who wrote on the fucking napkin, "Let's see what happens if we kill Shepard."
Did he really?
I'm pretty sure that he's the one who just magically woke up and was like, hey, what about killing Shepard? Like, just had no real thought process for it all. I don't know. I don't really care. I don't think 3 people moving over here. We've seen this too many times. How many since I've been in the industry? But if you ignore that, just go how long I've been playing games for the last 20 years. How many millions of times, Maddie, have we heard the top 3 people from this company are opening their own company, and nothing comes of it? Nothing. So to me, means sizzle
nothing.
Yeah.
Headline. Yeah. I get that. Yeah, I think in writing it's a little more easy to glean on how someone's impact can be, or how prevalent an impact can be, rather.
True.
I think because it's just you're constantly hit with dialogue in any game, and you can usually tell by vocabulary, grammar, imagery, how well written a game is, and how it invokes your imagination, but also just like lines that don't feel cliche, that type of stuff. So I feel like writing is a little more prevalent. Where I'm excited to buy Drew Karpyshyn's edition. But when it comes to like if they brought like, I think animation, you could, like if for example like this company hired a bunch of animators from TT Games, I would be fucking ecstatic because I think they're like the best animators in the industry. Like the fucking Legos that takes to at least in the old days, man, to take these voiceless toys and give them emotion and expression without having them utter a word, even when they do now. I just think the animation work there is brilliant. So I would be more excited about something like that.
That's a good point, though.
Yeah, so I just think, like, it depends what facet of the game they're working on. Writing, good. But stuff like direction, design, that's a huge team, right? That's a little bit harder to glean on because then it trickles into gameplay systems, and overall it's just like that's one person who may have influence, but something we won't see in the product. It's just about how everyone comes together and gets the game working. So for me, I'm usually pretty, as like Karak is, I'm pretty unaffected by additions to the studio, and like we talk about an old addition on Fallout 4 for Bethesda Game Studios was someone who worked on Destiny. He came over to help like fine tune the shooting, but for a lot of people, I made a big deal about it, but I wasn't as knowledgeable about game development. But like that one person is not controlling like how the game shoots and feels, right? Like for example, Bethesda owns Machine Games, they own id Software, like 2 prevalent, dominant first-person shooting companies. Like they don't need to go to the outside for good shooting, and that's why you saw the shooting in Fallout 4 improve more likely than that one person who they added on.
Yeah.
So there's that worth considering. Is it exciting that this company Archetype is getting new talent like this? Yeah.
Yeah,
great,
for sure.
But
but I think that just is general. It's exciting when it's exciting when people who want to work in the industry and aren't forced to because of money or whatever, but want to work there, get their jobs. Drew wants to work here. He could probably do what do you call it, TV or something, and so that's cool.
TV
it's
books,
like Chris.
for sure.
Chris could work on you could work on 1,000 different things, but he's working on games, which to me, that's always really exciting, which I know a lot of people think is a cheat answer because they want some passion behind this stuff. But at some point, the passion goes away when you see it fizzle out so many times. And instead, it's like, let's just look at it when it all comes together. And you got to live through a Mass Effect before you can sit in my shoes. You really, I mean, I don't know any other way to say it, dude. But if you live through a Mass Effect and you start the falling down, then I think the next time it pops up, you might be a little less tenacious about your excitement. That's just me.
Yeah,
just a curmudgeon.
All right, that's our last question, my friend.
Oh, was it?
That is it. Yep, that was our last question.
We're actually early today compared to the other times, because the other two we were like 5.
I think it's because our early sections were longer, and our patron question we kind of just zipped right through. Usually we take an hour on the patron questions, and we're like 40 minutes in on that, so not too bad. But this is why we just don't even bother splitting it up at this point. At first we tried that, but it's just not. It's not worth it. It's just more fun to have just an end of the podcast discussion to cap off the week.
Yeah, it works.
All right. So if you got this far into the podcast, you want to go ahead and let us know. You can tag us on Twitter, and we're going to say use the hashtag.
I was going to come up with something so negative, like
no.
don't be excited or something. I don't want to do that. But I was like, as I've been a Debbie Downer for like 2 of these answers, be like, kill your excitement. Just something shitty.
Falsified hype.
Yeah, false hype.
We could do that. Yeah, just test those who suffered through our show.
Yes, thank you for making it through.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys. So yeah, if you got this far, false hype will be the hashtag. You can tag us. You can throw it in the comments. You can throw it on the Patreon post when this goes live for early access. You can tag me on Discord. You can let Karak know he's also in our Discord. Just get involved. We love talking to you guys, seeing what you think about the show. And that'll wrap it up. Karak, any final thoughts as we shut this sucker down?
No, have an excellent weekend. I will be out next week.
All right, yes, you will, and so that means it'll probably be a solo show, ladies and gentlemen, or we get a guest. I've had such a fucking issue this whole show Englishing.
Speaking. I've noticed, and now I'm doing it. I'm speaking.
Yeah, like I literally will say I'll go to say like 2 words, and they'll just be flipped. And I'll say it, and I'll be like, no, other
ladies
way.
And gentlemen, this is what a stroke sounds like.
Yeah, because I'm just like, hold on, we got it. I'm trying to like speak on the fly, right? Like, you know, the part of the podcast, the goal is to keep it smooth flowing, keep it moving. But also this is why I don't edit it, so you guys get to hear all of my fuckery in real time, and you know, because people sometimes, it's very rare, but sometimes I'll get comments or like a tweet saying like, Matty, you're so well spoken. I'm like, dude, you haven't listened to the fucking podcast, because I am fucking not. All right. We'll leave you guys now. We appreciate you listening this deep. Thank you so much for supporting our show. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Peace out.
Peace out.